Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You can find me on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. Spelling GaelenTrombley. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. So, hello, everybody. This is episode 83 of the Galen Trombley Show. I have Ed Guenther here, and German.
Yep.
You said right? Yeah.
German, Polish, yeah.
I kind of butchered his name, and he just said it is Guenther without take the E out, and we have it. So we won't ask you for a spell check. But Ed, for people that don't know you, you're kind of one of those guys. I don't know a total. I know a little bit. We've met before. We've talked before. And then I follow you. I think on social media somehow, and a lot of it's through our friend mutual friend Scott Brightwell. But you do a lot of stuff with the telescopes and space and footage and outdoor stuff. I think it's all kind of cool stuff.
Yeah.
So people that don't know you, give us kind of background.
Okay, my name's Ed Guenther. I have a degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting and directing and stage design, what we used to call the all-arounder degree from Central Michigan University. And basically what that degree gives you is the ability to do anything. It has a minor built in performance. I have some mime. Eek. It's designed for everything. I've worked in television, building television commercials. I've worked in doing special effects every Friday. My partner, well, we can talk about that later. My partner and I used to do something rude to the secretaries in the theater we worked in. Every Friday, one of us would die in a bloody fashion in the main offices of this not-for-profit we worked for. So then that was the kind of thing we do. We would build exploding rigs, just building whatever. And a theater degree, for those of you guys who are out doing theater, I know there's a lot of folks in town, some very famous roadies in town here that tour with like Metallica and stuff. Plattsburgh is kind of a key for that. And I didn't move here for that. I moved here because my wife teaches at the university, and I just pretty much lay my hand to whatever I can lay my hand to. So
Wait, so roadies, there's people here that are on the road with Metallica?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And let me see. There was I met a guy in Lowe's the other day, and he was complaining about the fact that he was totally name dropping, and now I'm name dropping for him. Led Zeppelin, he was like, they kept canceling our tour. And it's like, well, rock and roll equals death. You can kind of do whatever you want.
Wait, so Led Zeppelin was canceling what? The tour he
their
was on
tours.
with them?
Yeah, their tours. So
was Metallica with them at the time?
It's something, yeah. It was
opening maybe for them?
Yeah, it was crazy. I'm a theater guy, so I did theater tours, musical theater and stuff like that.
I know a little bit of Metallica songs. I would really love to see Led Zeppelin in their heyday. That would have been one of the bands. If you had to go back in time and say, who would you see? Top 5, maybe even arguably top 3.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin would be up there.
Yeah, there you go. I was more of a Heart. I was more of a Heart fan. I used to follow them around in the late 70s.
Did you see them in concert?
I did, yeah.
Who's the two in the band?
Ann and Nancy Wilson,
Okay.
Steve Fossen, Roger Fisher, and the drummer whose name nobody can remember.
Because I grew up. So I'm not going to date my mom for anybody, but she basically grew up with music in the 70s, and it was like kind of like the 70s, 80s. Not so much. My knowledge of the 80s has really come in the last few years, which is crazy because it depends. There's a gap, and late 90s till today. I'd say honestly, not till today, till like 2010, 11, and then I kind of went in a hiatus where now I'm turning it to my parents and re-listening to the 90s and 2000s. So my music in the last 10 years is like there's nothing. I mean, there's a little bit, but I don't know a lot of the artists now. Where I still on my playlist have the same music I've listened to since I was like 10, 12, 13.
Oh, yeah.
So now I get it.
I think everybody does that. My kids know the song that was number one the week they were born. And other than that, they listen to my stuff. My son, for his senior recital, he plays the cello, played Bohemian Rhapsody.
On the cello.
On the
Amazing.
cello. Yeah, you just flat out. And my daughter, I keep playing Neil Peart. I keep playing Rush for her when she was a teeny tiny little baby, and she's a percussionist now, and she just loves beating out stuff. So yeah, and you're kind of stuck with that. My family has deep generations. I was 38 when my kids were born. quite by accident because my dad was 38 when I was born. So the music I grew up with was Glenn Miller and to a lesser extent, Barry Manilow. Yeah, thanks, Mom. That was, that was kind of the thing. You're always kind of getting that 5 generations back. For modern music, you can play any rap station out of Montreal or 99.9 The Buzz, and you'll get everything for the last 20 years.
Do you like that kind of music?
It's okay. I can listen to it. I was a big fan of The Offspring, and so
late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah.
I was working at the ferry at that time, and it was a lot of young folks, people like in my age in the 30s, and then a lot of kids just out of school coming for their first job, and so we got a lot of that stuff. The Killers, Franz Ferdinand, all that stuff, and it was just playing all the time. And so when I got a chance to control it, I would put in Electric Light Orchestra or Bob Seger Silver Bullet Band and just let it rip. So yeah.
So do you play a musical instrument?
I played cello when I was a kid. Yeah.
Do you still play it, or
I play with my sons? Yeah. I don't really keep up on it.
So did your son find the love of cello through you? I'm assuming there's some influence. Like, how does one get to the cello? Because cello is not really like a mainstream.
It's not. It's not the first thing. I got the cello because I was very tall in 5th grade, and so they said, "Oh, we need a cello, and this guy's tall enough. He can play the cello." Since 6th grade, I haven't grown. I'm 6'1.5 inches. I was 6'1.5 inches in 6th grade. And I weighed 130 pounds. I look like a parking meter.
Wow.
But that was it. Here, you're going to hold the cello. And for my son, he wanted the big instrument. He was a big kid too.
Yep.
And he wanted the big instrument. And the school district at the time only had one standing bass.
Okay.
And the kid that was ahead of him got the standing bass. So he couldn't play the standing bass. He's like, well, I'll play the cello then. And my daughter wanted to play the cello. My wife played the cello too in school, oddly enough. We don't have a lot of cello music around the house, but my daughter wanted to play the cello, and my wife just totally cut it off. That's Dr. Wendy Gordon over at SUNY Plattsburgh. I got to throw her name in there.
There you go. Yep. Good plug.
Yeah.
Good husband move.
Yeah, there you go. We had a small car, and the 4 of us taking the kids to school, 2 cellos wasn't on. So Viv got stuck with the violin, which she absolutely hated. And as soon as she could get rid of that and go to drums, she did it. So
how long has she been a drummer for?
Oh, that probably
Is she young,
7th grade. Well, she just went to school. She's at Oswego, SUNY Oswego.
Oh, cool. Okay,
just started this week.
Yeah.
And hanging out with a lot of people in her dorm from New York City. She says it's we talk about Plattsburgh being a city, Dad, but it's not. So that's kind of fun. It's it's an experience for her.
So are you an empty nester now?
Well, technically, my son is back up. He's doing international relations at New Paltz, and if he doesn't have a lab, they don't want him down there. So we're set up for distance learning at our house. My wife teaches from the house. He does classes from the house.
So I'm on the opposite end. I have 2 young children, so it's like knowing like it's kind of funny, like the freedom and time you had 3 years ago and beyond, and then also looking at you, where I'm like, you're kind of getting that back slightly, and then it's like all the 18 years in between. That's just or more, obviously, with multiple kids. Yeah, it could be 20 plus years.
Yeah, it's exciting because now you can talk. How old are your kids?
2.5 and 1.
So luggage. We used to call that the luggage stage.
Yeah.
You carry them just like you carry a roadie bag. Yeah. And now they're interesting and they can talk to you and talk at you. And so I'm really happy for this. If I had to do it again, I would have done it. I would have had my kids in my 20s. Just to have the energy.
So I was 28. So you said 38. So that's, but yeah, it's kind of, and again, I don't wish the time away at all, but I'm always like, there's always times where you're thinking, you're like, oh my God, like, I had so much time and I didn't realize how much time I had. And now I'm still like doing stuff. Like you just kind of get forced. It's like cramming for a test or whatever and like procrastinating. And then it's like, you got to get it done tonight. That's like every day of my life. It's like, just got to get it done because you don't wake up or they want to play or you're put in bed late. And it's like, well,
and you work hard. I met you because I blind called your phone number off a real estate sign. I don't know, can I say that here? Are we sponsored?
No, you can say that. We're sponsored by Cabinet Realty and Woodland Art.
Excellent.
Woodland Art, right, Hannah?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Is that it? Okay. That's how we met, and I just blind called you, and and that was 4 years ago.
It's been a while.
And we haven't been able to do the deal just for whatever reason, and it just hasn't lined up right. We've been close, but you're just working all the time.
The thing with real estate, real estate's a process, and a lot of people will be like, I don't want you to waste your time. And I'm like, listen, I'm not serving you. I used to serve ice cream back in the day. I knew if you walked to the window, you were getting an ice cream. Like real estate, there's not that expectation. Like you might buy something, you might not. But I said the only way you're ever going to, because we talked about it before, like you're only, well, you gotta shoot your shot. Like if you want to
Right.
you want real estate, you want a house, you want land, whatever. You got to be at least in the process. Our theme today was bugging Hannah earlier is called in the mix, meaning you got to be making stuff happen. So
Right.
if you're just you want to buy a property and you're not actively looking for a property, you'll never buy a property. So
Right.
it takes time. It's
When
a
it
process.
pops up, it does. Yeah,
Exactly.
And so every 4 or 5 months, you and I'd make contact, and
I usually shoot you a message
time.
a few times a year, and like I said,
Yeah.
it's usually just keep looking. I'm like, hey, that's fine. That's
We'd
perfect.
we'd have a great time.
It's yeah. So we so a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about because you're very. We'll get to the musical theater thing. I didn't know about the theater stuff, but I have a little. When I say background in musical theater, I was the stagehand that moved stuff.
I get it. That was me.
But
Yeah,
okay, so
that's what I
we
did,
actually
yeah.
we might have a lot. And you obviously actually we'll talk about that now. So theater degree. You go to Central Michigan, you get a theater degree.
Yep.
What was your intention with the degree? What did you want to do? What were your aspirations? What did you end up doing? And are you still involved or still love the theater?
I do still love the theater. Having a theater background, it ruins you for watching movies. It ruins you for watching musicals because you're like, well, I would have done that differently. As in the design program, I got into the design program. I was a military science guy. I was recruited by U.S. Army ROTC. They paid for all my books the first 2 years I was at school with the expectation that I would be an Army officer. And while I was in high school, I just, whenever plays would come into our theater, like ballet companies and stuff, I would run the light board. And this was before the computer controlled light boards. So it was all big cranking levers.
Oh, wow.
And you'd climb up on the board and be working two hands and your chin and a leg to make these things happen. Big transformers and stuff. And I loved doing that just for fun. And so I was doing it for fun while I was doing my Army ROTC.
And this was high school.
From high school, and then I got the scholarship to go into ROTC in college.
Okay.
And at the end of my first year in college, I met a guy named Tom Howley, who I was still keep in touch. He's the technical director for Theater J in Washington, D.C. He's still doing it after 35 years. And he and I... He said, I need a roommate coming over and live with me. And I went over and we were kind of talking and I had my uniforms and everything. And he's like, so what are you doing? I said, well, I kind of want to be in the Army. This is 1981. And he goes, yeah, well, hey, if you got some free time this weekend, why don't you come down and help me with a play? And I said, yeah, I used to help with plays. So I'll go down and help with the plays. And then, I'm censoring a little bit.
It's considered uncensored on our thing. So
Uncensored. Okay, great. All right.
Say whatever you want.
So
If you
uncensored.
got colorful language, go ahead.
There you go. Well, no, it isn't that so much as it was an actress, a background actress who liked leopard print catsuits. I'm shallow. I was 18 years old. I came from a logging town, had no idea, and this girl just thought I was great because I wore flannel shirts. And then I said, well, so I started doing theater and military science, and then the army guys, our sergeant major that ran our cadre. There's like 20 officers and soldiers that run the group for 100 plus kids. Doing Army ROTC. Sergeant Major Guy Cantu, his name was. He posed as a missionary in Cambodia during the Vietnam War. This guy was all that and a side order of fries. He was an amazing guy, amazing stories. And he came to me one day and he said, I understand you want to have a theater minor and you want to be in the Army. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, history minor? I said, no, I know history. I don't need history. He goes, how about engineering? Engineering with a theater minor? No, that's not it. I got the theater minor in ROTC. And he goes, there's one guy, one officer in all of the U.S. Army in 1981 that's involved with the theater. And he's the guy who is the advisor for MASH, the television show. Oh. And he goes, so Ed, you don't have a job if you do that. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, here's Patty waiting for me outside the building in her leopard skin catsuit, and I'm shallow. And it's pre-AIDS, it's post-Grenada, it's pre-Panama. There's really no reason for us to have an army at that point. We were really downsizing. And I said, I'm going to go this way, Sergeant Major. And he's like, oh, you're making a mistake. He called me back. It was like 2 months before I went to basic camp. And my dad is like, no. And I had a cousin who was a Top Gun pilot. And they're like, no, you got to be kidding me. What are you doing?
The damn leopard suit, man.
Yeah, it was the leopard catsuit. I'll admit it. I'm
You're an 18-year-old boy. It made sense.
Yeah, I sound proud. I wasn't really proud of that decision because all the guys I was in ROTC with, they're all retired now. They own drone companies and stuff like this, and they're all great guys, and we still keep in touch. But it just wasn't for me, so I shifted over I shifted over to theater full time.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, and you never know where you're going to end up.
So what was the aspiration like when you went to theater? I mean, you obviously didn't have much of a plan besides
keep meeting keep meeting ladies in leopard skin pantsuits. No, it wasn't that. The endorphins, you get a rush when you're doing production, when something goes off, when a play goes off, or the perfect light cue where you use like a finger and a thumb and you make the lights fade up like a sunrise for 45 or 50 seconds. It's just I got goosebumps. It's just that rush that you get in your head for doing something hard well, and then nobody even realizes what happened.
So, and this was you were all backstage, right? Production.
Yep.
So it wasn't like you were acting.
I did some acting. Yeah.
So have you done anything with Shazy Music Theater?
I have not.
Or do you know of them?
I know a lot of people up there, yeah.
Okay, so like I started when I was like 15 doing that, and I did it for about 10 years. And all backstage.
Yep.
I think I was on stage, besides moving stuff, I think we went on like one time ever to take a bow. For some reason, or like we want the production on the last show to take a bow, so whatever. Yeah. So the experience is pretty cool. I mean, especially the early stages, I say got into it. I was into it in the sense that, like you said, I like the AI. My favorite thing is you showed up a few weeks before the final production when they're kind of fine-tuning everything and really adding the props in and the set. And it always felt really cool when you first got there and you had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
I knew the name of the play, and that's about all I knew. One year we did Beauty and the Beast, which I think was like the only time I knew the storyline of a play before the play started. And we did some really cool
they do high-end stuff up there.
Yeah, we did like Chicago, and I didn't know this background of Chicago. Chicago's a great play, and the movie's phenomenal and everything. But again, going into it, I don't know all the scenes very well, and it was really cool to go from completely green, not knowing a thing, and trying to figure everything out until the point. And I have a very like puzzle kind of mind. Like I like figuring out like challenging situations or whatever. So it was always cool when you let up and you were like almost to showtime. In the last like 2 or 3 days, like we got it. Like I had the movements, I know where to position stuff, and it was small. It was small stuff, and nobody would care.
Right.
But
except you.
Except me. Yeah. And it was me and like the couple of the people backstage, but it was like, listen, because when you're backstage in a play like that, you have all these, actors and actresses that work for months and months and months to get it dialed down. Yeah. I come in at the very end, barely have any involvement, very, very little time committed to this thing besides a few weeks. The last thing I want to do is screw it up because this guy comes in at the end and just makes a mockery of the thing. So a lot of
actors feel that way. Technicians do not.
So, well, I guess, and some of them always said it was weird. Like, I couldn't do what you do. The actors and actresses saying that to us, and I'm like, there's no way in heck I'm going out there and singing on stage. But I liked the backstage aspect, but I liked being able to help those people have a platform to do what they love doing. But then a lot of people in the community liked it too. So I'm like, the last thing I want to do is go screw it up. So I took a lot of pride in making sure that the transitions were smooth, that we were very organized, that I was, I'm kind of one, like once the sets are done, how can we logistically move it out from the wings and get more space? And as the show went on, we had more space back there, which was kind of a cool feeling because you're cramped at the start of the start of the set. And it was like a Jenga game the whole night because you're just moving pieces around. But it was fun. And there's some, I only did the local stuff up here, but there's some talented people locally that do these plays, and you don't even. Some of them have background, some of them don't. You ask them like, "What do you do?" and find out they're like, pick a random job, and they have this phenomenal voice, they have great personality, good actors, timing, all that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the folks I work with now do stuff up there. And there's a couple in particular that they did Little Shop of Horrors last year.
Okay, cool.
And they did not Little Shop of Horrors. That was a couple years ago. They did Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And so one of the women I work with in one of our departments said, "Yeah, I'm playing Columbia. You don't know who that is?" And I said, "You guys are doing, you're doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show." And she goes, "Yeah." And it was a beautiful thing. Their rehearsals and everything was just punching, and it's just people here who have that love and they want to do it.
Yeah.
And I've always been attracted to things like that. Even the Army to a greater or lesser extent. It was something that appealed to me because the job was difficult and needed to be done, you know? And that's why I love backstage so much. Every time I got on stage, it was a factor of that. It was like, oh, we have a hole here. We need a guy who's wearing an Army uniform that can push a sand dune. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's me.
So are you still involved with theater at all?
Just with my kids and up until the 5th, 6th grade. And then they didn't want me to be involved because they knew that I met my wife on tour. and she was the electrician, and I was the carpenter for the tour of Sweet Charity, and we went all over the country. We stayed in 85 of 86 Motel 6s. At the time, there were 86 Motel 6s, and we stayed in 85 of them in the course of this tour.
Wow.
Yeah, our thought as the crew was that we only booked theaters that were near Motel 6s. That was kind of the whole idea for our bosses. But the nice thing about that is you roll in there 2 o'clock in the morning, and you know where the shower is. That's an advantage. But it's that kind of a thing. And so my kids grew up hearing stories like that, and they were doing plays in elementary school, and they kind of got out of it. I mean, we helped. But they didn't want us kind of in there because they knew what our stuff was, and they were trying to define themselves. If they did a Percy, the Percy Jackson novels, right? The Greek demigods. They did a Mary and Gilles Fortin were at Beaumont when I was there.
Yeah,
and,
so they were very involved in Chasey.
Yep. Yeah, and so they did a lot of stuff like that. And so they were like, "Hey, I've got this problem," and I'd say, "Well, here, and this is how I'd fix this problem," and like make swords appear out of nowhere, and just do stuff. But it was nice. It was nice to be able to do that and to donate that. But by the time my kids were in high school, they didn't want me around because they're like, no, we know you're going to be looking at what we're doing. It's like, no, I just want to see the show. And they're like, no, my wife is able to help them with the lights, but they're like, we don't want you on the set, Dad, because we know what you were like when you're on set. And they weren't wrong. It's different. You want to, in high school, you want to be your own person, right? You don't want to.
I'm assuming tough year for kids in the sense, like you said, they're trying to.
You bet.
There's a little bit of distance between mom and dad, and they try to do their own thing. And I think it comes back around typically when you're finishing up college, going into your mid-20s. I think you come back to your parents a little bit.
Yeah.
You got it. There's probably a good 4 or 5 year run of maybe a little more in the high school, maybe 6, 7.
Yeah. And we're getting that. Do you know Ben Wright? Ben Wright is the technical director at the SUNY Plattsburgh.
I don't know.
Kim Hartshorn is the designer there and has been forever. And Wendy, my wife, is in the history department, and she's the chair of the criminal justice department. And when she first came to town, Kim, who's a union stagehand, and he's toured all over the place, and he's the designer here. He designs for Pendragon Theater up in Saranac Lake.
Yep.
He needed some help because they didn't have a technical director, and they were doing Anything Goes.
Oh, I love that play.
Yeah, it's a fantastic play.
Yeah.
And so Wendy's like, Kim's looking for help. And I said, okay, I can do that. I'd been a technical director on tours and stuff, and I wasn't doing that anymore. But I'll go down and talk to him. And he said, yeah, I've got to open this show. Anything Goes takes place in a cruise ship. Lots of Art Deco details. And so he shows me a picture of front elevation drawn on a computer, and this is 1998, so very early computer-assisted design, just line drawings. And he goes, here, this is what we're going to build. This is cantilever, this is steel, this is 8 feet off the floor, and I'm sketching on the drawing, and I say, great, so do you have any construction drawings? And he goes, oh, I haven't had time, because he's a college professor. He goes, I figured you'd do that. I'm like, okay. When do we go up? He goes, 21 days. And I looked at him and I said, okay, all right. So we did the show in 21 days, but that's a nightmare. You're using your pancreas to hammer nails. I mean, every part of your body is just shot by the time you're done. And it was a beautiful show, and it went off.
Wow. That's fast.
Yeah, it was fast. And at that time I was looking for work around here, and I applied at the ferry company because it looks like a great job in the summertime. And the day before, Kim called me up to offer me a full-time job with the university as a technical director, which I'd been doing for 15 years in various places. The ferry company said, yeah, we'll take you on. And, if you do this for X amount of days and you do this, you can get your captain's license and drive the boats. And so when Kim offered me the job, I'm like, oh, dude, I don't know. I'm going to do this thing. I've been doing that. I kind of want to do something else. And then they hired this guy out of Vermont that I met on the ferry every day, Ben Wright, and he's been doing it ever since. And he is phenomenal.
Wow.
It was a better choice for them.
Yeah.
It was a better choice for them. I lost a pancreas to the theater, and I gained a wife. So it's a zero sum for me. But that's a hard life. It's a hard life. And the older a technician gets, the people you work for get younger and younger. Stage managers are all mid-20s, and by the time you're 40, you're dead. Basically.
So what, like from like plays, which plays did you do, and like which plays, I guess, either ones you did or didn't do that are like your favorite ones?
I did The Music Man 4 times in various locations, and the theater's saying that there's 3 things you don't want on stage, right? You don't want kids, you don't want fire, you don't want pets. and
Music
Man's got them all,
Yeah.
and he's got them all.
Yep.
And Music Man is a great show. And by the time I did the fourth time, I'm like, I could do this forever. And people were like, great, we don't want to do it. So I love the Music Man. Every so often I go on and be one of the salesmen on the train for a role. So I love the Music Man. I think probably the most fun I had on stage was in a show called Death Takes a Holiday. And it's Alec Guinness did it. It's Mr. Black, Brad Pitt plays Death and has to, and Anthony Hopkins is going to die, and then Death falls in love with Anthony Hopkins' daughter and can't kill him. So it's this kind of a thing. A guy somehow manages to trap Death in the apple tree in his backyard. Is this
a movie or
this
play?
This is the play, and then it becomes a movie.
Okay.
Meet Joe Black, maybe. I think Scott would definitely know.
Yeah.
And so my favorite part of that show was I was a technician, so I was moving scenery and everything else, and then they needed a guy to come on and be the head of the sanitarium. Who was going to take away this guy who said he had Death trapped up in his apple tree. And so that was me, and I came in, and we do this kind of psychodrama for a couple of minutes, and the guy says, I'll prove you I had Death in that tree. And I'm like, how are you going to do that, Tom? And he shoots me dead. So The whole idea is, what do you do if you live forever? In the instance of the play, it's if nobody ever dies, what happens to life? All of us, it's tough.
I've heard that, like, usually, people say it kind of in jest, but the idea, like if you could never die, is that something that if like you could never ever die, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
And that's always like what people think about, because like most people fear death.
Yeah.
Which is natural because it's the unknown after the fact. But then, like, what happens if the unknown after the fact is great, but then you can never die and actually experience that?
Yep.
And that's kind of like the trippy thing, because it's like, wait, you wouldn't want it, but then you're like, okay, I get it. Like if you just live and live and live and think about life gets worse and worse and worse if it doesn't get better, and you're like, well, I loved it in year 2020 and the next 100 years, but then it got really bad. Like,
well, and think about
the dinosaurs came back or something, and it's like,
think about the lines for the grocery store. If nobody ever dies, there's 5 times as many people in the grocery next year.
Well,
that's kind of a glib way of putting it.
What's the whole idea? Like overpopulation. Like if you got to think. I mean, compoundly, people are producing more humans than people are dying each day.
Right.
And like overall, the world population has never gone down. Obviously, there's places that have never been touched.
Right.
But it's still the same. The idea that like some of these major cities, can they have more people? Then more people, more problems, more then things start shifting, and then you start seeing probably cities develop in rural areas because they have to by just necessity.
They have to, urban sprawl.
Yeah, so it's kind of the idea: is there such thing as like an overpopulation where just like resources on the earth can't? And then you're talking like when people say we have all this food and stuff that you do now, but 1,000 years from now, are you going to have enough food when there's 50 billion people on the planet?
Right.
And that's the idea. It's like, oh, okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah. Well, and we'll stay out of horror and we'll stay out of politics for a moment.
Yeah.
But the situation we're in right now is not that unusual historically, where something comes in
like
and
a pandemic.
There's a percentage of people that just go. Malthus talked about this, where the more healthy people were, the more people who lived, and eventually there would be a dying off. And he used rats as an example. And I'm not saying that we are rats, and I don't want to die, but we're fighting this pandemic now on all these fronts, and all we're trying to do is make sure that people get sick slow enough. So that our doctors can help us when we're sick, and that's it's just slowing it down. And all the politics aside, you and I were wearing masks. We sanitized when we met.
It's like, I mean, it's all like, it's crazy. It's a crazy time right now. I mean, you got to think like things happen. Obviously, they haven't had a pandemic in 100 years. Was the Spanish flu they called it?
The Spanish influenza,
Or influenza, like so. I mean, which I found out wasn't actually. They thought it came from Spain. That's all they called it. It wasn't actually a Spanish.
They were blaming the Spaniards.
I think it was actually like the U.S. got hit, and it was, I don't know. I don't think there was really a reason why it was Spain. But
the Kansas plague. Well, Spain didn't publish their death numbers. That was it.
Yes.
Everybody else was talking about, oh my gosh, this is happening, and Spain was saying nothing.
Yeah, you're right.
And so that, I mean, what are you going to do with that? So I got to go back to the dead guy for a minute.
Go ahead.
Once I learned how to be the dead guy, so I got shot. I come on for 3 minutes. I get shot. I lie on the floor for 41 minutes. while the scene is playing on around me, and I'm not moving, and I'm dead, and they drag me off, and my toes are dragging behind me on the floor. And that for me, I loved that, because there's no lines really. You had to learn some lines, but then you just took a nap on stage until they dragged your body off.
So what did you do? Did you fall asleep?
They shot me, and I fell so limp that somebody got up out of the chair in the audience. They were going to come help me. They thought I'd actually had an accident. And so, yeah, I took a nap. And then after that, I did a show called The Real Inspector Hound, and I start the play asleep, and I don't get up until the curtain call. And when I hop up, everybody in the audience freaks out. I'm laying there. I'm a dead body under the couch, and people can see me, and I'm not moving for 78 minutes.
Wait, so you're under the couch?
Yeah, I was under the couch, and you could see underneath the couch and the legs, and every so often somebody'd roll a table into my head or something, and I just was laying on the floor. And we did that on tour.
So they thought it was like a mannequin the whole time?
Yeah, they thought it was a mannequin. And then when you jump up, they're like, oh my God. The only role I ever played where I didn't have to die is in a play called The Fantastics, which was the longest running show on Broadway for years. There's a guy called Mortimer, and he's the assistant to the great actor who's hired to do this scene for the leads. And Mortimer is the man who dies a lot, and his specialty is being shot or stabbed or run over by a horse. And he dies like 7 times during the show, and I never got a chance to play it. I was in the crew, but I never had a chance to play that part.
Wait, so the other thing, back up to like,
sure.
When you're, and I know this sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
My mind just got blown when you just said I played a dead guy for time, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, that's got to be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah,
because you don't do anything, but not to do it. Like, I don't know if I could just sit and not do anything for an extended period of time besides sleeping in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I'm dangerous when I just have a chance to just think. Like, my wife hates it when I go canoeing all day and I come home and the wind has just been blowing through my ears.
Yeah.
And so all these things are coming out of my head. She goes, I hate that. And I go, it's meditation for me. So that's what I do.
So yesterday I took the whole morning off. I literally sat. This is all I did all morning. I sat, phone off, and sat with a piece of paper, notepad, and just wrote.
Yeah.
And just jotted down stuff, things I was thinking about, things that need to be done, mostly, functioning around the business, but like just the times to completely check out and think is one of the, like, when people, like you said, going for a kayak, or going for a paddle on a kayak, like that, Hannah's in the background. I'm going to pick on her again, but like,
you should come up here and sit, Hannah.
Running.
Grab a microphone.
She's been actually, she hasn't done a solo podcast. I told her when she got her license we would do one, and that's been a while. So we'll get her on.
She's getting there.
We'll fill her in the gap. She'll do it. But the like, she goes for runs. Like, I'm sure when she's running, it's like she just gets to mentally think. And like, car rides, long car rides. Like, I love long car rides that I can't turn my phone off because I just daydream and I can just drive and coast and like. Which is kind of funky because you're paying attention, but you're not.
No, you're just kind of in the moment.
Yeah. And or even like taking a shower or mowing the lawn, like just things where it's just because I live in a world where there's a million things going on all day long, and my mind's racing a mile a minute, and it's just like I just love when things slow down and you can relax and just think. And
there's a lot going on in your head though. It's nothing out here. It's all in your head, and that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
But like you said, it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic just to sit and think and, going for a walk and not having to it's the simple act of going for a walk with no distractions is just so peaceful. So like when obviously you're a big outdoor fanatic, right? You like going outside and stuff. So, so where did that fascination come from? I know you said you did some stuff with the Boy Scouts.
Yep. My son was a Cub Scout, and that was another one of those things where he didn't want me to be involved in Cub Scouts. And then when he became a Boy Scout, he said, yeah, Dad, why don't you be a leader? And I'm like, okay. And the gentleman I work for, Greg Dolan at the Adventure Program, he was our Cub Master, and he became the Scout Master. And so he said, yeah, here, Ed, this is how you train. And so I did the training, and I got the training in. And the next meeting I go to, my son is there, and he's got this bright red and white patch on his uniform I've never seen before. And I said, what's that for? And he goes, oh, that's for getting an adult to sign up as a leader. And I'm like, fine. But I did that for 10 years with him. We had a great time doing that. But for me, I came from a hunting fishing family. My aunts and uncles and my dad were all born in the Depression, 1930. They hunted to live. The game of all sorts was part of their food source. And so from a very early age, we were always outside. And that's kind of where I got
Is this Michigan?
Yeah, in Michigan.
Because you think you told me that when
Yep.
we first met. Do you know Ryan Lee at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
He's over
Ryan's
there now.
Huh?
Isn't he going over there now? Chris Harloff. I know Ryan Lee and Chris Harloff, and Chris is over in Michigan now.
Oh no, Ryan Lee was the Boy Scout director for many years. No, right? No, he's in the area locally, but he's a good friend of mine. So I knew he was the executive director, I think, for a long time. I say a long time, but
for our district. Yeah,
a couple years maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. He was good.
Yeah. So I mean, he was an Eagle Scout and did all this stuff, and he's one of those guys that he's a very smart, in tune kind of person. Where like if you were like, hey, listen, you're gonna be stuck out for a night, he'd be kind of one of those guys. Be like, yeah, if I could grab a couple guys, like honestly, you sound like a good one. Brightwell sounds like a great one. Ryan sounds like a good one. I got another buddy, Adam, who's just like
Adam Crossley.
Oh, yeah,
you
know Adam.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
he's one of my Cub Scout parents.
Okay,
when I was
yeah.
a Cub Scout leader.
So Adam is about as hillbilly as they come. You wouldn't notice it if you saw him day to day, but then like if you knew the real Adam, he is like a true.
He
redneck.
Dresses up nice, but he's a backwoods guy.
He's a redneck at heart for sure. we have a lot of fun. We go skiing in the winter with each other, and then so he's. Those are kind of like my apocalypse wood people.
That's your go-to.
Yeah, I think that'd be a fair.
That's a fair posse right there. I think that works.
I mean, I'd be dead weight, but I think we could get there.
I always tell people I can
carry. So I can like ruck up the mountain if I had to.
Right. Yeah. So, well, it's a lot of my friends will do that, and they'll say, "Ed, you know all this stuff, and you got it." And I say, "Well, I'm a handicap because I'm a diabetic. All right. So you got to keep me alive if you want to use my knowledge." And they're like, "Oh, okay, all right." So they make that deal because it's just being out in the woods is being out in the woods.
So you do a lot of hiking?
Yeah. A lot of hiking, a lot of paddling.
So, I mean, obviously, like the canoeing, the paddling, and obviously moving up here is a phenomenal spot for that.
Yeah,
like I'm sure. Is this the best place you've ever lived for that type of stuff, or is Michigan pretty good?
Michigan was great because you're within an hour of anything you want except mountains. This was a score because my wife was finishing up her degree, finishing up her PhD, and she always lived in northern Utah. Her family were like the one non-Mormon family in their entire community. Her dad worked for NASA as a writer, a grant writer, and they were just kind of outside that mold. And she wanted mountains. And after living in Michigan for 5 years, which is just flat, it's flat. When you see the weather in Wisconsin, you know what the weather's going to be in Michigan the next day. That's just the way it is. And she said, "I need mountains," and I'm like, "Geez, I don't know. We've been together for 4 years. I need lakes." And it was starting to be a problem. There was starting to be some friction. And then out of the blue, she got she saw a job notice for Plattsburgh here, and she flew out for the interview, and they had called our house to offer her the job before she got off the plane coming home.
Wow.
And she's like, "I love this place." And I said, "And where was it?" And she circled on the map, and this was the last town that I did my last tour of when I was a roadie. I quit being a roadie after I did a Christmas Carol up here.
Yes, you did tell me that.
And it was weird. I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll do that. That's great. We got lakes right there. We got mountains right there. It's perfect."
So it's no brainer then.
It was a no brainer at that point.
Easy sell.
Yeah, easy sell. Right out of school, right out of getting her PhD, and she was able to come to this place.
Nice.
And it's just, I think we're talking about meditating, being open to what's happening around you. When you try and force what's happening around you, that's when you get into trouble.
So you mean just let that opportunity come?
Just let it happen. Yeah. I mean, I've got to get my medication, right? I have to be thinking about that. I got to get food for the kids. But other than that, just what happens really, if you force it, it doesn't work.
I'm a big believer in that. I think if just the idea that things, I'm one like karma. I think is a real thing. Like I think if you're just a good person, I look at every day. Like I used to go to church as a kid. I don't go anymore. But it's the idea that when like this, the 10 Commandments and everything else said everything's good as long as you like live by some moral compass. But I've always just felt like the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. Like I can do that and just treat people, like if I find that I'm doing something that I wouldn't like that reciprocated, then I don't do that thing. And it's one of those where as long as I can do that and I try to help people out the best I can, whether it's, I whether it is helping them or not, as long as my intent is to help them or something like my intent is to do good, I look at as long as I can do that, then things usually come back pretty good. So as long, again, as you're trying to focus on bettering someone, that's my day to day. So I try to do that. Am I perfect? Hell no. You know what I mean? That's not
right.
But it's the idea that at least I'm striving for that.
That's the dream.
Yeah. But I don't force anything. So it's like if I'm good, if I'm acting the way I should act, then the stars will align the way it should. And I'm a big believer. Like I'm kind of one where I do believe that our lives are kind of mapped out for us in some weird way, whether it's like a higher being or whatever. I still think that everything is, you make the decisions you're meant to make. Like if you were, you guys were deciding, instead of going to Plattsburgh, you decide to potentially move to Idaho, which kind of, again, has kind of both.
Has it? Yeah.
Like your life's been totally different. Not worse, better, or anything. It just would have been different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you would have made the best of the situation. You would have met different people. You would have, your wife would have took a different position. You would have done something different. And then it looks at, like, you can't go back and say, well, what if I would have changed this path? And I'm like, any path I pick, I just pick and commit to it. Because I'm like, well, I'm just going down this one.
Right.
We'll figure it out. Like,
Right.
if it's going to work, if it doesn't work, I'll just detour and go the other way. Like, it's, so I think there's something to be said about not putting, like, knowing that once you make a decision, like, just being 100% is the right decision. And, to use a real estate term, it's like buyer's remorse. Like, don't be remorseful.
Right.
If you're going to buy it, just buy it. Like,
Yeah.
if you want it, commit to it. Don't, don't second guess yourself.
Couldn't agree more.
You seem like a full-on commitment guy.
Well, I'm a dilettante. It's an old word from the 1920s, and a dilettante was somebody whose family had a lot of money. They were never forced to make money, so they could just do what they wanted, and so they got a little piece of everything. So I'm kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. I think Adam Crossley and I joke about that.
Oh yeah.
And it's knowing a little bit about everything. Do I run a bank? No, I have classmates that got their MBAs and actually ran banks in Michigan, and they ran that bank, and that was their decision. I could never do it, but I did get them through Marketing 101 by doing the designs for their store they were supposed to make, and they gave me a 6-pack of beer for that. So I mean, it's everybody goes in these different paths, and I can't be mad at them for doing that stuff. I can't be mad at me for turning it down. It's a different decision.
What's like following your passion, and as long as I think is again, if you love something, you love it, you have fun with it, and so speaking of loving something, when did you get involved in like the telescope, and do you take the photos, or is that more Scott?
That's Scott. Scott's a photo guy.
So you're more the telescope guy.
Yeah, I'm more of a, hey, look at this. I like the light coming from that thing that we're looking at in the sky and hitting the mirror and going to your eyeball into your brain. That's what I like, that experience.
So like, what's your like knowledge of? Because obviously telescope, I'm assuming mostly space, right?
Yep.
So like, what's I love space. Like I think anybody, I don't know anybody that doesn't like space. I think there's always a curiosity about it, and it's also the thought, and we've talked about this before in other episodes, that like when you start comparing the Earth to the size of stars and galaxies and stuff, and then eventually you just feel like my life is useless because it's like, what's it matter?
No, your life is part of that thing.
I know, it's like a speck within a million specks, a billion. So where did the fascination with space come? Like, what do you look at when you look through telescopes? So just go into that whole thing.
Sure.
I think it's fascinating.
Sure. And it all goes back to living with a Depression era family, that, being raised by these folks, and we were hunting all the time. And from the time I was teeny tiny, I was out in the woods with my dad. My earliest memory of hunting with him, I was 3 years old, and we walked out behind the barn on this farm we were living on. He was a game warden, and we walked out and behind this barn, and we sat down on a log. It was maybe, for me, it was a massive trek, the way it is in my mind. It was probably 70 yards. Yeah. We just walked out to get away from the house, and we sat on this log, and he sat there, and he had a shotgun, and I had the lunch. And the lunch was in a metal lunchbox, and I kept checking it to see if the lunch was in there. So it's like flip up those metal clasps and bang the thing and close it up. And the sandwiches were wrapped in wax paper, right? Because it was 1966 and 65. And I kept rattling the wax paper, and I think about it now, and I'm thinking, why didn't he just bury me out there in the woods? Because there was no way any animal was going to come within 100 miles of us with all the noise I was making. But we sat there, and the sun went down, and we were getting ready to walk back in, and the stars were up. And when you're hunting in the fall, Orion, the constellation Orion, is the big thing.
Hunter.
Yeah,
right?
Orion the Hunter. I called him the Paperboy, actually, because whenever the Paperboy dropped off at our house, and I would go get the paper in the morning, I would look up and there would be the stars, and I called him the Paperboy when I was a little kid. And yeah, it's Orion the Hunter. There's a great nebula there. So, but having that really recognizable thing, once I had my paper out, and once we're playing, football games, and you're looking at the stars after football games are over, and you're coming home, get into theater, and you're doing that 2:00 walk from the bar. Just looking up all the time. And from my youngest days, 3, 4, 5 years old, I'm out hunting with my dad, duck hunting, deer hunting, just anything. You're out in the woods at night, walking along, waiting for the sun to come up, and there's just stuff to look at. And so my father had his education in the stars was, he was in the Army Air Corps. He graduated from flight school 2 weeks before Japan was bombed. for the final time. And so he was a navigator, and he learned celestial navigation with the sextant. And so flying these planes cross country and using the position of the stars and your watch to figure out where you were. It was absolutely wild, and I cannot do it. Thank you, GPS satellites. But that's how he learned it. But it was a very practical knowledge, and so he gave me a very practical knowledge. You look at the handle of the Big Dipper, and you follow the arc of the handle down to Arcturus. And then Arcturus goes straight to Spica, and Spica is where the planets are. So this is how you find your way around. And that's how I learned. Now they call it star walking. And it's something that's kind of missing lately because everybody wants to take the big image. And I'm not going to poo-poo on Scott, especially if he's not here. My friend Scott Brightwell is an amazing astrophotographer. He's self-taught. And his stuff is absolutely amazing. And when we go out to look for stuff, I just like going and seeing the thing and having people come and look at the thing. And then he takes that image home and is able to share it forever. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if you and I were to go out and we were to do a star party and we were to look at the stars, you would have that moment. It's kind of like live theater versus recorded programming or binge watching. You've got that moment, and then that moment is gone. And while you can remember it and remember how cool it was, you're not going to have that. You're not going to have that focused image of it again, which is super cool. I love what they're doing with astronomical photography. I think that when you can hold up your phone and say, hold it up and point it at the sky and say, "Oh, look, there's the Crab Nebula." Well, you haven't really. You've used a phone to find something. Mm-hmm. You haven't found it.
That's me. It's cheating.
Yeah,
Total cheating.
I feel like it's cheating. I like sitting out for meteor showers. We just had a big meteor shower, the Perseids. And I love sitting out for that. And somebody showed me an app on their phone last October that if you just put the phone on a tripod and aim it at the sky, it takes like 4 frames a second. And then at the end of the night, it processes it and it saves every one of the meteors.
Okay.
So you get the shot and it looks like the meteor storm. It looks like the Star Trek spaceship. And then you're like, I saw 197 meteors last night. No, you didn't. You were asleep. Your phone saw 197 meteors. It's a cool thing. I have some of those pictures on my phone, but I don't. And I'm old fashioned. I mean, I think that being out there and actually seeing this stuff, it's not better than being an astrophotographer. It's just different. Mm-hmm. And so much of our focus now is on, oh, look at this great picture. And when I show the Andromeda galaxy to somebody and they say, well, it doesn't look like it looks on the computer. No, it doesn't. That's the light that came right to your brain.
So when you look through like a telescope, like how far out or how many magnified or how magnified am I saying?
Yeah, right? the magnification.
Magnification.
Yep. Yeah. A telescope is basically it's a mirror to gather and focus light, and that the whole structure, no matter how big or small the telescope is designed to make that image appear about 3/4 of an inch above the eyepiece. Okay. So you put your eye 3/4 of an inch in the eyepiece, and or the microphone in this case.
That's good.
We might want to sanitize this. Yeah. COVID can go from your eyeballs, and that lens train, the light goes through a lens train from that eyepiece to the mirror and then out to the object. I have a 16-inch telescope which is on loan from an organization down in New Jersey that I use, and it's we call it the light bucket because it on a clear night, I'm seeing stuff that's 500, 600, 700,000 light years away. I'm seeing light. Yeah, I'm seeing light that left long ago. And depending on what I put on it for lenses or how dark my environment is, I can see further. And that for me, I mean, goosebumps again, right? Cool. and that for me, that's what it's about. I don't get to see like big cloudy nebulas and stuff like these guys are imaging this week. But by the same token, the forest fires in California are affecting everybody I know from the Mississippi West because there's so much smoke in the upper atmosphere that it's starting to affect how they can see things. So they use their computers. The photographers I know in town, they will go out and they'll shoot for 2 hours and then they'll take 3 weeks to make those pictures happen. And I love that they do that. I love to see what they're looking at, but that's 3 weeks away from the actual event.
You mean 3 weeks to like edit the photos?
Yeah, edit the photos. You got to punch the color. I have a tendency to just hold I have a bracket now, but I hold my smartphone up to my eyepiece. And I shot the last Mercury transit. I went down to New Paltz when my son had just started there. We had a telescope, an 8-inch telescope set up outside. And it was, I think everything we had lined up made it about a 400 magnification. So 400x,
yeah.
Which, you can buy a lens that'll do that for a camera. But we had this kind of big old tube and had we were watching Mercury cross the sun. The transit from start to finish, we could see it up there, and we had a solar filter on it, so we weren't burning our brains out. And then just whoever walked by, we'd say, "Hey, come look at Mercury." And they're like, "You're not looking at Mercury." It's like, go ahead and take a look. And we watched that happen, and I would hold the phone up and take that picture, so I could kind of memorialize what we were doing. But for me, the experience was I had 208 people in the course of that Mercury transit come over and look at Mercury, and I was able to show them something they hadn't seen before.
And you can see Mercury pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's a black dot going across the face of the sun. We're on a solar minimum right now, but the sunspots, you can see the sunspots with the rig I have.
So can you, like, when you're telescope looking at the sun, I mean, obviously I'm assuming there's some type of like lens over that.
I use a glass filter.
Okay, so it's not as bright as it.
No, it's like if you're looking at an eclipse and the eclipse is almost full, you can use like welder's goggles to keep from burning your retinas out. So that's kind of what it is. That type of material. The telescopes all come with labels on them that say, "Do not look directly at sun, you will burn your eyes out." And if I'm doing something for little kids, I'll set my telescope up and I'll point it in the sun in the afternoon, and I'll go like this, and the parents are like, "Ugh," and then I'll hold a sheet of notebook paper up in front of the lens, up in front of the eyepiece, and just go, poof, it'll blow a hole in it, it'll set it right on fire.
Really?
It's like, this is why we don't look at the sun unless we have this cap on there. And then you put the cap on and you invite people over, and they're kind of sneaky, but then they look down there and they can see sunspots. That's wild. Yeah. And so that for me, it's the event again. I mean, anybody can show you a picture of the sun.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to set something on fire and then make you look through the thing that set the thing on fire.
I was talking, I think it was Jared last one when he came on. The idea that how far is the sun away from the Earth again?
Plus or minus 93 million miles.
It's like 93 million miles away, and it can burn your skin.
Yeah.
It can hurt your eyes. Like, you got to think like how powerful the sun is, and how small the sun is on a grand scale. I mean, obviously the sun's, I don't know where it is in the hierarchy of all the stars, but compared to some of the stars, it's a dot.
Yeah, it's small and not great.
And it blows my mind. I'm like, so how far? When you take these big planets, how far they are from us, or how far they have to be from a planet. I mean, they must be burning things up.
Yeah, well, that's every time you're hearing about their search for extra exoplanets, I guess they're calling it now. So the planets that are around other stars, they find those planets by looking at the star with a telescope that's aimed very tightly, and in its simplest form, that star is moving slightly. And by the movement of the star over time, they can say, well, this star is moving like this because there's a planet of this much mass that's orbiting next to it. And it's called what do they call it? A perturbation of the orbit. Anybody that knows me that's an actual astronomer is going to go, no, dude, that's not the word. But it's that eccentricity of the orbit is how they started finding those planets. And then they can point even more powerful instruments at it to find out where the planets are.
So, I don't know. There's so many questions.
No, that's okay.
It's just like stuff when it like space stuff. It just like pops in, and then you think of stuff, and then it like transitions into, I don't know.
That's what space is like.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I guess like when you start talking about like planets and stuff, like what's the closest thing? Like if you were to shoot like one of the closest, I mean obviously the closest star is the sun, right?
Yep.
But when you start going into like the North Star. Like the North Star is what, Sirius?
Yeah, right now it is. Yep. Yeah, our pole it moves a little bit. So not Sirius is our North Star. Polaris is our North Star.
Polaris, sorry.
That's okay. Sirius is the brightest star that isn't our sun in the sky.
That's the brightest star. Okay.
And that's the hunting dog for Orion. It's right near Orion. But that and that its brightness is a function of how close it is and how bright it is. I don't know, this summer or this spring, everybody was talking about the star Betelgeuse, that they all thought it was going to go supernova. And because it was dimming at a rate faster than it should for its life expectancy. But I mean, the odds are stars go supernova all the time. The odds are we're going to see another one. We've seen a couple much farther away, but the reason Betelgeuse was freaking people out is because Orion is a constant in the sky.
Betelgeuse is the belt, right?
I know Betelgeuse is the upper. Let me see. If you're looking at Orion, it's the upper left corner.
Okay, but it's in the constellation.
Yes, it's his sword hand. It's in the upper left of the constellation. Gotcha. And as Betelgeuse was dimming, people were freaking out, and they just some guys released an article last week describing what they're seeing. They're seeing a cloud of stellar matter that erupted from Betelgeuse, because it is at the end of its life cycle. It has eruptions. It blows away its mass into space. On our sun, they look like they call them coronas. Is big ejections of solar mass that go out and curve back in, and they have a model that shows this mass being expelled from Betelgeuse, and then cooling, so it darkens, and then drifting in front of the sun, kind of like when you're looking at a steam train.
Our sun,
okay. Or no, Betelgeuse rather. Sorry, no, it's in front of Betelgeuse.
Okay.
It's
because Betelgeuse is a star.
Yeah, and it's hundreds of light years away.
Wild.
Yeah, but the fact that they're able to say, now wait a minute, this is what happens when a steam train goes underneath the bridge, and you can see the steam train, and then all of a sudden its smoke cloud is covering it, and you can see it, you know it's there, but the cloud is in your way. And this is kind of how they figured this out for Betelgeuse.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So Betelgeuse is a star.
Yep.
It's millions of light years away.
Yep.
So we're talking light years, meaning that what we're seeing left a million plus years, whatever that time frame
I'm not sure what the time frame is. I think it's like 7,000, but it left years ago.
So you're seeing old light, basically.
Let me
right.
I'm going to do that thing where you look at your phone, and when you're doing something else,
you can totally do it. No, this is good. You want to fact check?
Let me see. We want to fact check this.
But it's the idea that like if it's a star, all the activity that's happening at the star is happening now, but we won't. How long would we hypothetically experience what's happening there?
It's going to be different for every star. Let me see. Betelgeuse, not Beetlejuice the movie. There it is.
Way different spelling.
It's the 10th brightest star in the night sky, and after Rigel, the second brightest in the constellation of Orion. Thank you. So come on, Wikipedia. There we go. Radius, we don't want care. 642 light years. So the stuff that was happening...
642 years. So it's not that far away.
No, it's not that far away at all.
Yeah.
I mean, cosmically speaking.
Yeah.
So that light, the thing that happened to Betelgeuse that caused... it to dim on us last month happened around the 1300s. Happened at the end of the Dark Ages.
Yeah, that's
wild. Yeah, and that's cool.
Wild.
Yeah, because cosmically, that's right next door. You know, I mean,
that's wild. Like it just and that's in light travels obviously fast.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
So a light year is not the same as a calendar year.
No, it's 3.6. Oh, sorry. 3.6. Have a seat. We have an extra microphone.
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay. Good enough. We're trying to fill a seat here. Whenever I'm talking stars, I want an audience.
That's it. Bring the scopes out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that kind of popped my brain about stars and that speed of light is that the farther away you're looking, when they talk about looking at a really distant object, the farther out you get, the older the object is. So the Milky Way, our spiral galaxy, we've seen it. We have a good example. If we look at Andromeda, that's kind of what we look like. So when Andromeda looks at us, they say, "Hey, that's what we look like."
Andromeda is
it's a galaxy,
same as Milky Way.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Well, the Milky Way is us sitting on the. Now I'm going to get really old. Sitting on the needle at the center of the record player, right? So the little spindle that the record sits on, and we're looking along the record. So the Milky Way that we're seeing is a flat disk with a bulge in the center that everybody's rotating around. And when we see the Milky Way, we're looking through that rim. So it's kind of like looking at a cowboy hat from edge on.
Yep.
That's what the Milky Way is. Okay. So that's all those stars. So when you look away, I'm using my hands. This is radio. I've got a face for radio. So when we see a galaxy that looks like a galaxy, we're looking at it from the top. The Whirlpool Galaxy is one you can see. Andromeda you're seeing from an angle like this, but you're seeing more of that object. And then when we look at the Milky Way, we're looking along the edge, through the thickness of the arms of the Milky Way galaxy.
So you're talking layers and layers we're looking through pretty much. So the Milky Way galaxy, what is in the center of the Milky Way galaxy?
Black hole. a large black hole.
So we're part of the Milky Way galaxy.
Yes.
So we're just one, like our solar system, which is the sun and the
Yep.
9 planet or 8 planets, I guess. No.
Don't start with me.
Okay, I'm gonna say, I still like Pluto.
I
so-
love Pluto, absolutely.
So okay, 9. So we say 9. That's what I grew up learning was 9 planets.
Yep.
So dwarf and whatever, it's still good. So that's our considered solar system.
That's our solar system. Yep.
Solar system is part of the larger galaxy, and there's obviously millions probably of solar systems within the galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely. Statistically, there has to be one that's like ours.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
When
the
people
numbers
are
are so huge.
When
Yeah.
they're like, is there other life form? Like, there's probably a million other life forms out there.
Right.
I mean, just you think how big the universe is,
Yeah.
and that, it doesn't shock me that are some of them better than ours. I'm like, I would hope so, because if there's millions, we're probably somewhere in that spectrum. Are we number one? It'd be cool. But
Yeah,
I doubt
yeah.
it.
I
doubt
love
it.
to. I'd love
Numbers
to think
aren't-
that, but
it's like
yeah.
winning the lottery. I don't think
Yeah.
we're gonna be the winner, but it'd be cool if it was.
Just as long as you don't go supernova, I think it's a win.
So supernova is when everything just dries up.
Yeah, the fuel that it's burning is no longer able to keep its shell away.
Okay.
So that the fuel, it's like when you're blowing out a birthday candle, and you're blowing on that birthday candle, and then you run out of air. So the flame is moving, and then it stops moving because you can't blow on it anymore.
Yep.
And so that's as the sun runs out of fuel, a couple things happen. Either it has small explosions that blow all that gas away until there's not enough gas to sustain the reaction, and then it turns into something called a brown dwarf. And I
Which
apologize
means that
to
all
everybody.
all the flames of the star are gone.
The stuff that makes it light is gone.
Gotcha.
And then in a catastrophic scenario, it would collapse and all that material would come into the center and it would explode. And that's the nova and the supernova. Is Latin for new. Supernova is super new, I guess. I don't know. But it's a bright light. And that blows all that stuff out.
So is a supernova a fast process, or can it take, like when you talk about because we're talking like
Yeah.
big numbers here.
Yep.
When it gets to a supernova and you say it basically implodes, like does that implosion happen like boom, it's done? Is it a quick reaction, or is it like, okay, this is actually going to take us thousands of years to happen?
Yeah, and I'm a layman. I learned this sitting in a duck blind and a deer blind. Okay, but it's as far as that goes, the exciting thing about Beetlejuice was that we were watching it and we're like, this could be the moment.
Oh, so that really could be just like
it could have happened.
tipping point, like it's done.
Yeah, it could have happened
Okay.
1301 years ago, and now we're going to see what happens.
So potentially that could have just been like,
Yeah.
it would just be poof.
Yeah.
You're like, wait,
yeah,
it's gone.
It would have blown out and made. Well, you've seen Orion, right?
Yeah.
Have you've seen the nebula in Orion?
And again, I'm
okay,
not
that's
certain.
all right.
What's a nebula is?
We're going to see it. A nebula is a cloud of gas.
Okay.
Nebula it's one of those Latin terms they coined. It's cloudy or misty. It's like a cloud.
So it looks again
Yeah.
kind of a cloudy,
Yep.
hazy looking subject. Okay.
And the Orion Nebula is really interesting because you can see a lot of detail in it. Everybody knows Orion. I'm going to assume we'll go with that. You've got Orion's belt, which is the 3 stars that are close
That's
together.
why I look for the belt, and then
You
the
look
rest
for
of
the
it's a
belt.
little hazy. But
Yeah.
yes,
So you've got the belt, and you have the 4 corners around the belt, and
it's
that's
like it's pointing this way.
yeah, it's like a hand and a shield, and a sword on the top.
Oh, I thought it was a bow and arrow.
No, I'm pretty sure in this one, the ones that I've seen,
I trust you way more than me, so
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And these opinions are mine. They may not be the opinions of the National Astronomical Union. And then the 2 stars lower down are the feet or the knees, and so it's all artistic licenses to what's drawn. But the important thing about the belt is that it points you to 2 things. There's an enormous. It's not a nebular cloud. There's an enormous cloud of debris that's being lit and gas that's being lit by the stars in Orion. And if you have the right filters on your camera, that's why I wish Scott was here, you can see the colors of this vapor that's around it. It's an enormous nebula. The Veil Nebula is there. But in the belt of Orion, if you go down from the belt, there are 3 more stars, and that's Orion's sword. That hangs down, right?
Yep.
So the middle sword, if it's super clear, what we can get in the wintertime here, you can see that the middle sword the middle star doesn't look like a star so much. And that's because it's a huge cloud of gas. It's a nebula. There was an explosion there, and it's a star forming zone. In the middle of it, there are 4 bright, tiny stars, and their light is lighting up the gas cloud that blew out of whatever this event was. And you can see it easily with pretty much any telescope. A good pair of binoculars will get you there. And it's that connection you make from going from a bright dot in the sky to an actual thing. and it's there. There's the goosebumps again. 'Cause
Yeah,
that was
that's
the
wild.
Yeah, that was the first thing I saw, and it's there's all sorts of different classifications for these. I didn't prepare, but this is one where the stars in the middle of them, called the trapezium, is lighting up the gas around it, and so it's actually, you're seeing the stars, you're seeing the clouds of gas that it's reflecting off of, and and it's like bing. We're both making those are mind blown
this is
things
cool.
here. Yeah, and so that being able to talk through that. I mean, I can show you pictures of Orion Nebula until I'm blue in the face. But when you look at that and you see, okay, that light came from those stars and bounced off that gas and came down to my mirror and came through my eyepiece to my eye in real time, that's
wild.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah. We're going to get really quiet here for a second.
I know, just thinking. Like it's like the worst thing you do in a podcast is dead airspace.
Yeah,
but I kind of like my mind's being blown, and then I'm just like, wait, I'm trying to process this whole thing. So is Orion? That you said is it your favorite constellation?
Absolutely, it's the first one I was able to say that's Orion.
Yeah,
it is my favorite constellation.
I don't know a lot of them, but again, when the comet came the other day, a month ago,
a month ago,
yeah. So when the comet was coming, me and my wife went out and tried to find the comet. Obviously, with the naked eye, I think it was almost
you could find it, but it was hard.
It was and the problem was where our house is. There's like a tree line that's not far away, and kept thinking, we're like, this is like based on what we're researching and trying to figure it out, it's very close that it could have been just at the top of the tree. So we might have actually missed it. Like we might have been able to see it, but it might have been just hidden by our tree line.
Right.
And I learned a little bit about constellations. Because I'll be honest, I cheated. I had the app.
That's okay.
Because I was like, because the thing is, like, I can see the Big Dipper, and then I know like off of the Big Dipper goes to. Off of one dipper goes to the Little Dipper, and then off the other one goes to Polaris, right? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah. The Polaris is actually the first star in the Little Dipper. Yep.
It goes.
Yep.
The Dipper goes like this. This one points up,
Yep.
right, and then it's upside down.
Yep.
It's dipping a Little Dipper into the Big Dipper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so that's about the extent I know. Orion's Belt is the one I look for.
That's what you got to know. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's another one that is it a. It's kind of easy. It's like a crown. What's the crown one?
Corona Borealis. Yep.
And that one's pretty easy
the
to
northern
find,
crown.
too.
That's pretty easy to find.
I mean, once you kind of know where it is, like, oh, okay, I do. It's right there.
Yeah, and you can go from there to Hercules. Cassiopeia is a W in the sky.
Okay.
And that's Cassiopeia is the key to looking at Andromeda. And so it's learning the stars. The programs are great.
So you can say it's like a roadmap.
Yeah, the programs are great. And so using that program and what you've learned, you can find anything. Well, you can't find anything. I will frequently try to find things that I can't find. The first objects I ever looked at for myself, found for myself with nobody helping me. I was at a retreat down in Lewis, where I met a lot of really great people that were really helpful to me in kind of the telescope phase of my learning, from the hunter phase to the telescope phase. And there are two objects. They're Messier 81 and 82. We'll talk about Messier in a second. Okay. M81, M82, and they are two galaxies. And it's Bode's Galaxy and the Cigar Nebula, which it's also a galaxy, but you're looking at its edge on. And so Bode's Galaxy looks like we think the spiral galaxy. Cigar is right next to it. In one eyepiece field of view, you can see both of these objects. And you find that by, you've got the four stars in the Dipper, right?
Yep.
So the two end stars of the Dipper point to Polaris.
Yep.
Okay. So the kitty corner stars, from the bottom to the last pointer star, point in that distance of those stars, point to these two galaxies. And so you're looking in a
which way?
It's below the North Star right now.
So if like the Dipper goes like here. I know it's a bad example.
I know. Yeah, we're doing finger puppets here.
I know. So
yeah.
Star here, star here, star here, and here's your Dipper.
Yeah.
This point's that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's where the crutch, like it goes with the point.
It's a point across the bowl. Yeah. You know what we're gonna have to do? We're gonna have to go out and look for it.
I got it. I know. I'm a cook now. I got it.
There you go.
I got to go on one of these star parties that you call them.
Absolutely. The key for us here in Plattsburgh, you were talking about your skyline. is we have a really close, really bright astronomical object that all of my friends call the Great Montreal Nebula. And that's, if there's any moisture in the air at all, the city lights of Montreal, 100 kilometers away, they kind of blow out the northern horizon. So it makes it harder to see those dim objects. You can still do it. Put a big mountain between you, like Scott did like we did for his comet pictures. That great night we have our comet pictures.
He had a couple phenomenal.
Yeah, the mornings were a lot worse than the nights. I like staying up. I don't like getting up. And we were up, the Valcor Brewing Company, we were up at 3 a.m. a couple mornings walking down there to see the comet in its morning appearance. And that's where we first got really excited.
Oh, so you took them right down here.
Yeah, we were right on the lake.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, you try to take humidity out of the equation. I like to go higher up in the Adirondacks because the higher you get above sea level, the less moisture stays in the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were right down here on the beach, and we were full firemen. I don't know what he was doing, but I was stacking my clothes. I had my shoes on the ground and my pants stacked up on top of my shoes. And so the alarm would go off and my wife would hit me and I'd roll out of bed and I'd step into my shoes and I'd pull my pants up and drive over here. And I was on the site at like 3:10, sound asleep. And he'd kind of come staggering up and we'd set up our gear and then we would just kind of sit there and watch, and you're looking around. And all of a sudden, I'd never seen a comet like this before. I'd never seen a comet where we found it. That's called recovery. Discovery is the first time somebody sees it, and recovery is you know where the comet is and you go and you look at it again and again and again. So it's the first time I'd ever recovered a comet by myself, and I was super excited. And it was 3 a.m., 3:20 in the morning. We can see the ferry boats going back and forth, and here's this comet hanging over them, and we were both like, it was a lot of dead air. Galen.
Yeah, so,
we were talking.
But you can, I mean, naked eye, you can see this pretty well. And then obviously once you put the telescope on it.
Once you knew where you were looking, absolutely, you could see it naked eye. I was using my telescope because I like the telescopes. Cameras and binoculars were really the best way to see it.
Yeah.
But I was because I'm used to working with my telescopes, I would put a really low magnification eyepiece in it, and we would hang out. There's another guy in town, Mike, that my son and I met on beaches. We were looking around for places to see the comet, and we just were running into all these amateur astronomers. And there's some pretty big heavy hitters in town,
really?
Doing imaging. Yeah, and it's that kind of thing where it's just a voice in the darkness. It's like, hey, what are you out here looking for? I'm looking for the comet. Yeah, it's right over here over this tree.
So these guys are out there in the morning with you.
Yeah, these are just people that we met casually when we're out looking for this thing.
They're doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that's what I like about astronomy, and that's the thing I can't do with COVID. You know, now if I want to set my telescope up in my neighborhood, I got boxes of wipes. I've always got my mask on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
you've got to get your face right where that eyepiece is, and it's we're not taking a chance, but it's not that, oh, you have to see this thing right now. Come look at this thing.
So when you set up your telescope, like you do this throughout the communities.
I try to, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just sitting there looking, all of a sudden you'll just leave it and just like, hey, here's something cool that you guys can look at.
Yeah, my kids say that I actively get anybody within the sound of my voice to come look. So
and most people are receptive to it?
Yeah, if somebody's walking their dog, for the most part, they're like, I don't know. And it's like, no, come on over and look at this. And they'll come over. So
you got to think. I think the only thing about that is like stranger danger. Like, who's this
absolutely.
Guy? But then there's also, but again, I'm saying like the stranger danger, but then right in the back of their head, someone's like a good devil, bad devil. They're like, but it's a telescope and it's looking up at space. And I think that would be like, I think just most people are kind of like, yeah, I do want to kind of see what he's looking at. And,
well, yeah, absolutely. The sun is good for that because then it's daytime.
Yep.
So I set up my solar scope. I set it up on campus one time by my wife's office. I think, was it for the Mercury transit? Scott and I were moving around that day. That's the first time we really worked a setup together where we both had scopes and stuff. We were trying to take images. But I had my scope set up in the parking lot at CVH over on the SUNY campus, and had it all set up. And the mirror that sits in the front of it it's kind of like super mirrored policeman's shades. Okay, that's what the lens that's keeping the sunlight out looks like from the front. And I'm looking through this telescope, and this woman starts running over, and she's yelling at me, and I don't understand what she's saying. And it turns out later, once we had both calmed down, that she was speaking Vietnamese. And she said, "Don't do that, stupid." And she kept saying it over and over and over again. And I do a star talk called the Mark One Eyeball. I've done it for star parties, and I'm telling the story. And I have the words in the thing, but I don't memorize them. I read them off the slide because she's like, "Don't do that, stupid! Don't do that, stupid!" And she's yelling at me in Vietnamese. And she runs across the parking lot, and I'm like, "What?" And she says, "Looking at the sun is bad." And then I said, well, no, here, this is the thing I'm using, and this is the eyepiece. And if you look in there, and she's like, no, I'm not going to look in there. I said, just look in there, and you'll see spots on the face of the sun. and she looked into it and she goes, "Oh, that's all right then." but she was freaking out that I was out in the middle of this parking lot staring directly into the sun using a big object, and she's just thought I was going to burn my eyes out, which is nice. But I was able to reach out to her, and if I had said at nighttime, if I was looking at the moon and I said, "Excuse me, miss, come on over here and look at this moon," here's the dark voice, the stranger danger thing kicks in.
Yeah.
It's better to have kids there, because your kids can kind of help you. Okay, this is on the up and up.
Yeah.
Scott's family, I love hanging out with Scott's family because his son Eli is super star crazy, really? And
Cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
And he loves to. And when Eli's up on the ladder looking through a telescope that's twice as tall as he is, that's the hook. People see that and they're like, "Oh, the kid can do it. I can do it." I was in October. I went to a star party in Arizona, and I've never seen a sky like that before. It was a thing that Explore Scientific put it on. Scott Roberts and those guys at Explore Scientific are awesome. They do these parties all over the world. And we were in a park in southern Arizona at about 4,000 feet elevation, and I'd never seen stars like that before. And I had set up in a dark site, kind of away from this campground where everybody was staying. And my friend David was there, who's been a comet hunter for 40 years. And so we were off in this primitive site, and there were two guys from Ohio and myself. And so David would be calling out what he was seeing. He says, "Okay, we've got Jupiter, and we've got that cluster right over by Jupiter." And the Midwesterners and I are like, "We're not seeing any of this stuff," because there were so many stars. The sky was so clear that you would look up and it was like
a lot of light pollution out there.
No light pollution at all. Yeah.
Awesome.
When somebody would turn on their red flashlight, they're like, "Kill that," because even that was too bright. Just incredible. I think, was it Nogales? There was a town in Mexico like 130 miles away, and we could see their light, but it wasn't intrusive. Excuse me.
Okay.
And we're sitting there, and so David is calling out what he's seeing, and he goes, "Okay, I've got this. We're kind of seeing the California nebula," and he's a trained observer. He's done it for years, every day. I think his observing logs are at McGill University, and I think he has 20 or 30,000 sessions where he just logs every night he sits out. He's done it his entire life. And so he's sitting calling these things out, and the two other guys from the Midwest and I are like, "I'm not seeing this stuff. I'm not seeing it." Because when we would look through our telescopes, it looked like you were looking out the window through a sheer curtain, right? There were so many dots of light, and it's all stars.
Yeah.
And if you get over near the Milky Way, forget about it. Here it's a band of light that you can kind of maneuver around. Out there, it's a wash of stars. Wow. Our solution to this, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just sitting there, and I don't have a powered telescope. I'm all steer by eye. So I took my cheapest lens out of the box and I licked it. And the Ohio guys, Tom and Billy, they're like, wait, what did you just do? And I licked my eyepiece. And they're like, "Why would you do that?" Because they're hard to clean. You don't want to scratch them. But this is gross. That layer of saliva took enough of the detail out that I could start to see stars that I could track again. So,
Really?
Yeah. So I'm looking at Orion, and you could kind of see where Orion is, but you couldn't see it because there were so many stars behind it. The stuff in the Milky Way, there's some great things to look at in the Milky Way. We just couldn't find them until we'd put some sponge on the lens.
So I mean, obviously I'm geography and elevation and stuff. So why were the stars so much clearer out there? Was it just purely the elevation? Was it because of...
There's no moisture.
Okay, I was going to say it's no clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so it makes sense.
I think the most
just that
moisture,
dry
desert air. Yeah, I was drinking 2 gallons of water a day, and I wasn't sweating. I mean, it was super dry, and this is October. I loved it. I can see why everybody I know retires out there that's a stargazer, because here we have 3 good nights a month, and out there they have 23 good nights a month. And in the summertime, it's even better, and it's great. But we were up at about 4,000 feet, and the higher up you get, the less moisture hangs in the air. And then just down here, we'll have a 70% humidity night, and each one of those little water molecules that make it humid reflect a little bit of light. You can't see it, but you can't see it, but it affects what you're seeing.
So when you're out there, when we look up at the sky, and we're basically seeing like the big bright stars.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then when you go out there, you're talking, there's millions in between all of them.
Yeah.
So you see, here's the big ones, but then there's
everything is just filled in, and it's so much data you can't figure out what you're seeing.
But the guy that was leading the class, you said he's obviously very trained. He can look through all that.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, that ding, ding, ding. Even
he's been doing it forever.
That's wild.
Yeah, he's a comet hunter. I met him in Lewis. my wife took me out. She used to work for the college auxiliary services, and she said, "Hey, they're having a dinner. They want to thank us for letting them use the Twin Valleys retreat site down in Lewis." And I'd just been working. I didn't want to go, and she's like, "Come on, let's go." And this serious name dropping coming up. I won't swear, but we drive down to this thing, and we pull in, and there's this kind of lanky Ichabod Crane guy standing there directing traffic, and he parks us in a corner. He says, "Hey, thanks. We're just about to eat. Coming up to the cabin." And I'm looking at him, and I look at my wife, and I say, "Do you know who that was?" And she goes, "Yeah, I know who it was. Do you know who it was?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I had just met David Levy, who was the comet hunter with Eugene Schumacher, who, among other things, discovered the comet that hit Jupiter. That the one where the comet broke up and busted up." So this guy went to a summer camp here in the Adirondacks in the 60s, and he's always loved it. So he comes and he gives guest lectures at the campus, and just a genuinely nice guy. You know, you would think somebody like that who worked for NASA and worked all these big telescopes.
And he was directing traffic.
He was directing traffic, and just the nicest. And we've been friends for 10 years now, and it's just that's the way that community works. There were 40 people at this thing. 17 of the people at this retreat I went to the first year gave their job as astrophysicists. They're like, "What do you do?" I say, "Well, I'm an outdoor guide. I'm a facilitator for therapeutic counseling." And they go, "Oh, I'm a retired astrophysicist," because they're so used to looking at the stars. And it's just, we were talking about mindsets earlier. Yeah. It's not something that you consider. It's like, yeah, this astrophysicist in his spare time, he just sits and looks at the stars. But they're like you and I, you know, everybody's accessible. Everybody has knowledge. Everybody can share that knowledge if they want to.
Yeah.
It's nice.
So again,
sorry, David.
No, this is good.
I'm apologizing to David. I drop his name. I get kind of embarrassed when I drop his name, but yeah, he's a good guy.
So, how many, when you talk about like a comet hunter, like how many comets happen at any given time?
There are.
I mean, when you say comet hunter, I mean obviously the one the other day, Neowise, right?
Yep, the Neowise. Yep, the Neowise is a search system that's looking for near Earth orbit crossing asteroids. So it's part of our space guard where they want to see if they can see something that's going to hit us and do damage. That's part of the Neowise.
So a comet is just an asteroid. That's
no. A comet is a ball of gas and material that is coming from outside the solar system. Asteroids, they think, are debris left over from when the solar system formed, but they're inside. So a comet is mostly gas. And it's mostly ice crystals and stuff that are sublimated. And as it gets close to the sun, the energy coming off the sun blows that tail off and gives you the tail you see.
So, I mean, how often those happen?
All the time. What's happening now is that we have these computerized systems that are looking for comets. And that's why Neowise, there was one a couple of years ago called Assassin. And these computerized programs, they just look for things that aren't supposed to be there. And that's how they're finding these objects. There are 4 incoming right now that have been discovered since Neowise F3. I think that was the third comet that Neowise had discovered this year. The big one we're calling Comet Neowise. That was the third one that it saw. And then there's 4 since then that Neowise has discovered that are coming in. So they're there all the time. It's whether we see them or not. Did you see last week there was an asteroid that missed us by 1,000 miles?
Well, I think so. They said something about there's one that's supposed to hit us by the end of the year or something.
Yeah, we get hit a lot. When, let me see, 8 years ago, in Chelyabinsk in Russia, there was a big meteor that came close to the surface before it broke up in the atmosphere, and it injured like 1,000 people because it blew out all the windows in this town in Russia. And that asteroid that turned into a meteor and detonated in the upper atmosphere was just a big sonic boom, was about the size of a bus coming in. So there's lots of stuff like that hits the atmosphere, but depending on its angle, depending on where it is, we don't see it, we don't hear it. This one last week, they actually saw it going away. You know, they were looking, and one of their automated cameras said, "Hey, that thing just left." And when they did its orbit, it missed the Earth by 1,600 miles, I think. It was very close. So 1,600 miles. If you're sitting here, that's from here to New Mexico.
Yeah. So if we're like sitting here looking, I mean, I'm assuming you could see it go right through the sky.
No? If you knew where to look, yeah, because they're reflecting the light. This one that missed us last week was they think 20 by 30 feet, like the size of a small ranch house. You know, a small ranch house. And the thing about its orbit was when they were tracking it back, they could look back in their cameras and see where it came from. And it was close enough to the Earth because they weren't looking for it. It came through, people were taking pictures when they were looking at something else and they saw it, and it came through our environment. And then as it was going away from us, we could see it. And when they ran that orbit back, it missed us by 1,600 miles. And it was so close that the Earth's gravity changed its trajectory. It was going one direction. It was so close to us when it went around, it kind of slingshot around us and went back out. And we never even knew it was here until it was gone. And it's not something to panic about. That was the news story. It happened during the Democratic National Convention, so nobody paid attention to it. But they're like, yeah, if this thing had hit us, it would have been a big fireball in the upper atmosphere. It wouldn't even have been as big as the one that broke all the windows in Russia. But these things are out there all the time. Mm-hmm. And now it's like social media. Stuff was happening all the time before social media, but now we get to hear about it all the time.
Well, so Neowise, you said, is the actual is the
it's a system. Yeah.
But that's what's used to find the comet.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the one that you and Scott went to look at.
Yep.
What made that one more popular? Why was that one that we all knew about? Why were you guys chasing it versus these other 3 or 4? Is it just because it was easier to see, closer?
It all added. It all the factors came together. It's kind of hit or miss. My friend David again. He sits out. He has a small telescope. He gets up at 2 a.m. He pans back and forth across the horizon toward the sun, 3 degrees at a time, which is like the width of your pinky finger held out at arm's length. And so he'll put his telescope into a piece of the sky and he'll pan back and forth and he'll look for something that doesn't belong there. He's basically memorizing the sky. And when he was doing the comet hunting with Eugene and Carolyn Schumacher, they were taking pictures of the sky, like a minute apart. They would aim at the same part of the sky. They take pictures a minute apart, and then they put them in something called the flash comparator, where they would run the images back and forth. And whatever star moved between the 2 images, that was something that was moving. And then they would look at it closer and see if it was a comet or an asteroid or something else. And so that very rigorous, they would spend thousands of hours and stacks of plates of film and stuff. And now a computer can do that in a second. So Neowise is a computerized system that does that. It's the same thing that they were doing for 30 years. And that's why it's seeing 6-8 comets a year.
So why was it called Neowise then?
Well, it's near Earth orbit.
Well, I mean, sorry, why was this comet called Neowise? That was the system.
Because that's the
or is it like a layman's
the
person?
news? Yeah, the news media said, "Ooh, comet Neowise." It was C2020 F3, I believe. So that was its official designation. And
so Comet 2020, and I'm assuming F3 is some rating system.
F3 is it's a rating system for where it was.
Like a tornado, almost like a...
Yeah, well, it's that same kind of thing. We won't say that because then people will think it's going to kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Assassin was the same way, and I can't remember the acronym for that. It was just stupid.
Do you remember 1997 Hale Bopp?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, how close was Hale Bopp? Because I have... closer, right, than Neowise?
I don't think it was closer.
The reason I have a very, very, very vivid memory where, so 1997, I think this took place like around May or June. I could be wrong on the time.
No, you're right. Spring comet, yeah.
Okay, so I just remember as a little kid, was going to school in Chazy. I remember we went to open swim. And, it was like they have a pool and a couple of nights a week you go swim. So we were leaving, and I remember walking out with my mom, and my mom was actually a science teacher, so she for 30 plus years.
Nice.
So I remember walking out and looked up. My mom's kind of the same one. She sends us, if there's space stuff, she'll send like check tonight, meteor shower and stuff. And she's one of those.
I do that too.
So yeah, so I appreciate it. So if you're sending text me because I like that stuff. But it's I don't know if I'll be able to see it, but I will definitely go out and make an attempt to look because I love that stuff. So we go walking out, and of course you got to think June, like close to the longest day of the year. So I remember walking out. It was about 7:30 at night, and you looked up in the sky. Obviously, it's not much darker than what we see now. I mean, it was darker, but it's still pretty light out.
Yep.
And I remember just seeing it going across the sky, and you could see it moving.
It seemed like it was moving. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that was like hit fly by like this. It wasn't like a shooting star, but you could just see. You could definitely see it moving, and you could see the mass or whatever, and you could see the tail clear as day.
Yeah.
like I mean, I was a little kid looking up, and like it's like when you talk about like a vivid memory, like that was a vivid memory.
Yeah.
I didn't see that through an old photograph. I didn't see that from like someone telling me. I remember vividly looking up and seeing this. So how close was that to us? Because again, we're talking 90. I was 8 years old. I don't really have a great memory of it.
I get you.
The memory is very vivid in my mind, meaning it was close enough that I could see with my naked eye, just looking in the sky.
Right. Well, for comets, it's a matter of its size.
It didn't look small.
No,
it looked very big at the time.
And for comets, it's a matter of size, the size of the object. There's a lot of things that go into play, but the larger the ball of snow, the larger the dirty snowball that comes in from the Oort cloud or comes in from outside the main solar system, the larger that is, the more material that can be blown off of it by the solar wind. And then what you were seeing, because it was in the northern hemisphere. So the light coming from the sun in June is kind of shooting over the pole to us here, right? Because there's always that little day glow of the sun going over the horizon. So Hale-Bopp was in a position where the sun was hitting it and it was coming off to you at a good angle. It's like when you see satellites at night here. It'll be going along and all of a sudden it'll just disappear, and it's because the sunlight isn't bouncing from it to you again. And there's a lot. I'm sorry, guys. A lot of this podcast is us using our hands.
I love this stuff. And okay, so
Neowise just happened to be where we could see it in the northern hemisphere, where a lot of people could see it at a time of year where the light from the sun was hitting it in the right way for us to see it. And it just nobody knows what comets are going to be like. We had one earlier this year that broke up. Somebody was talking about it the other night on the Comet Watch. It's a Facebook page talking about how they had gone out and found pieces of this comet that broke up earlier in the year that was supposed to be a big comet. Its nucleus was the part that was shooting the gas off into the tail was larger than the Neowise F3. But when it went around the sun, its orbit, it got so close that it broke into pieces. So it was this great comet in January, February. It went between us and the sun, so we couldn't see it anymore, and it came out of the other side of its orbit in chunks like a shotgun. And so it stopped being a comet. It started being a cloud of debris.
So this would have been something you had been tracking.
Oh, yeah.
So you were like looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, the guys in Arizona had seen it because they came in from kind of the south of the planet, and the guys in Arizona and down in the southern South America were seeing it, and they're like, "Oh, wait till you see this thing! Wait till you see this! We're getting great pictures from Australia." And then it went around the sun and nothing, and it happened like 3 times in the last year where we were like, "Come on, we want to see this thing."
So you'll see multiple comets a year.
Well, the people see multiple comets in the year. In the Champlain Valley with our weather, we don't. Neowise was a classic.
Yeah.
We saw 7 or 8. We had 7 or 8 great mornings and nights where we could look at it.
So you guys went out every morning.
I tried to.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or I would wake up at 3 a.m. and Scott would text me and say, "Cloudy," and I'd go back to sleep because he'd look out his window and see that there were clouds. We weren't going to see anything.
So is this one where when all this is happening and like you guys are going out, like it's 3 a.m. just because of the sunrise?
Yeah. That's how we were going to be able to see the planet
a little bit more. So when you go talk about planets, because obviously planets don't flicker, stars flicker.
Right.
Planets don't. So
well, the stars don't flicker either. The atmosphere, the light coming through the atmosphere makes it flicker.
Now the other thing is if you take.
Sorry.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense. So the other thing was we were looking for the comet, the International Space Station.
Yep.
Is this true that that's only like 200 miles away?
Yeah. 250 miles, depending on where it is in its orbit. Yeah.
So is it also true that thing will jet across the sky fast?
Oh yeah.
So when I was looking up, of course, me and my wife were out there and we're looking at this thing, and it just like whoop, it goes across the sky.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure until I realized, and we didn't know then. This was like weeks after. I was like, I think that was the ISS, and it go like fast too.
Yeah,
like, it's like whoop,
some people say that's an airplane, but the ISS moves like nothing else in the sky because it's big and it's low and it's fast. So you think it's an airplane, and then all of a sudden it's kicking along. It sticks out, and once you see it, you'll always see it.
So the other question: when someone launches, because a couple months ago, when SpaceX sent up the 2 astronauts, when they went up to the International Space Station, right? How long does it take them to travel that 200 miles?
It was they did 2.5 orbits. It was funny. There were some guys in New Jersey that were trying to see it, and we had partial clouds. I was able to see it.
You're trying to see the spaceship.
Trying to see the actual spaceship going up. Yep. And I think it was 2.5 rotations. The space station does an orbit every 90 minutes. That's how fast it's moving. It goes all the way around the planet every 90 minutes.
Wow.
And it shows up in a different place in our sky because our planet is moving while the space station is moving. So it's kind of, yeah, I know. It's
90 minutes?
Yeah, it's like you and your buddy are running toward a pop fly, right? And you kind of see your buddies moving and you see the pop flies moving, then all of a sudden you guys run into each other.
Yeah.
That's kind of what seeing the space station is like. And so every 90 minutes, 93 minutes or something like that, they get a sunrise every 45 or 50 minutes, I guess. They're kicking right along. And in order for the rocket to get there, they shoot in front of where the space station is, and then they wrap around the Earth once or twice, I think, before they get to it. So we saw, in the evening, the space station.
Sorry, say that again. So the spaceship goes up.
Yep.
They go around twice. When you say orbit twice.
Yeah, or orbiting is going around the planet, going around the thing you're circling twice.
But if it goes, are you talking about the spaceship? No, the
space station is going, and then the spaceship has to do the same thing because the ship has to get to where the station is. It's super confusing.
Yeah, this is like a mind trip right now. Okay, and I'm loosely following that, but yeah. It's more of I have to wrap my head around it, but yeah.
You're the wide receiver, right? I don't know if you played football. The football,
I know enough. Yeah,
the football is coming to you. That's the wide receiver is the dragon. The quarterback is Cape Canaveral. Now that's no good. The wide receiver is the dragon, and then the football comes to where dragon is going to be, and that's how they meet up. Yeah, the ISS. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how they meet up. Orbital mechanics is a trip. How this stuff goes. It's mind-boggling, and I can't talk about it without using my hands.
So you're very passionate. So people are over here. Ed is really fists, hands. With like the Milky Way, we get the shifts of the hands. We get a lot of
trying really hard not to spit. Because
you're doing good. We actually wipe everything down. So
okay,
good. Yeah, you're good. So, but the idea. Okay, so when it goes up to partly it doesn't obviously you're 200 miles. Like I can drive to Newburgh, which is probably 200 miles, something like that, and 3.5, 4 hours. So, but it takes so long because of the orbit.
Yeah. You want to make sure you're meeting up at the point where your speed and their speed are the same. There's all sorts of great tutorials on this on YouTube.
So like when a spaceship goes up into the sky, is there a brake system on it, or are they just kind of going? They're steering a little bit, I'm assuming.
Well, they're always the dragon is always speeding up. As it's going up to get to the place where the space station is, so that's part of its launch is that it keeps accelerating, and the faster you go, the further out from the planet you orbit. So
that's kind of your brake system.
Yeah, and you're not braking. Wild. You're not braking. You're just ending up in the place where you want to be.
You just got to make sure Yeah. And so really, when they come together, there's a point that has to happen.
Yeah, and then there is some maneuvering involved there. They do have jets that allow them to maneuver to the space station. Then it reaches out and grabs them, I guess, with a Canadarm. It reaches out with something and pulls them in. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So two questions I have just to make sure, because I want to ask these, and these are very layman
and these answers are my opinion. They may not be correct, but I'm certain. So, okay.
No, these are more like opinionated sake. They're there you go. So the first one is, what is your favorite space movie of all time? Because I've seen a few, not a ton, but I've seen a few, and I want to see which one you think is kind of a cool one.
Yeah.
And then my second thought, and we'll go into it after, is I want to talk to you about SpaceX, Elon Musk, and
sure.
Stuff.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so they're easy one. They're you say what you want.
Easy one.
Do the space one first, the movie. So which is your favorite space movie? Why? What? And I say favorite, you can go from because you got a theater background. You obviously love. Astronomy.
Oh, yeah.
Is it astronomy?
Astronomy is what we do. We look at the stars. Astronomy.
What's the other?
Astrophysics. Then that's the orbital mechanics. That's the math.
So you like all this astro stuff. So that you have the theater. So which one from a movie standpoint is your favorite movie in the sense of from a pure entertainment perspective, and then which ones you think from a scientific accuracy one? And they could be the same.
They're definitely not the same.
Okay.
Because probably my favorite, most recent space movie would have to be Interstellar.
Okay. With Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, and it makes me laugh a lot, and it makes every astrophysicist I know angry because they're like, that's not science, or two people that believe the science and the other two people don't. Wallace and Gromit Take a Holiday. They're the claymation figures. That's probably my favorite watch all the time space movie because they build a ship and they go to the moon to get moon cheese. That's fun. Interstellar. I love Interstellar because they manage in the course of the movie to equate gravity to love to gravity. Right. Okay. The love a person has for somebody is able to affect the primal forces of nature and bring them back from the black hole. And my kids are like, Dad, you're weird. And I was like, yeah, I'm weird. That's my favorite movie. Everybody's seen.
But obviously, that was a fictional storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And the math isn't even very good, according to the astrophysicists that I know. They're like, oh, that's stupid. And I was like, no, I think that there's only one thing wrong with Interstellar, and that's the waves on the planet should be moving faster. And then they all start yelling at me about this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. It's like, it was an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
What was the other question?
And then which one is the most scientifically accurate?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Or that you found and like, wow, that actually someone did their homework on
Apollo 13 was a brilliant piece of film.
Yeah.
Apollo 13 was absolutely...
from the science perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they nailed it, and it was a good movie.
Great movie.
They nailed it right down. And the computing power in my cell phone...
was Tom Hanks in that?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Tom Hanks, Bacon.
Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
Wait, who was the third guy?
Gary Sinise was on the ground.
Yep.
He was the one who was sick, so he couldn't go, and he solves the problems.
Yep.
But my smartphone has more computing power and more energy than they had in that entire space capsule to get those guys back. That's
another mind-blowing thing.
Yeah, the 1960s. The Hidden Figures, the women who were the calculators. The movie just came out about all the African American women who were doing the actual math calculations for the orbital mechanics. Yeah, that's
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There's the number of stories, and it was all because a president said we're going to do this,
which was Kennedy.
Yeah, and made it happen.
Yeah.
And then Johnson, carried on with his work, but it's a little different from a president saying we're going to do this now, and that's all the politics I'm going to talk.
Yeah.
And that
he pulled it off, so we'll give him credit.
Yeah. And I was a young kid for Apollo 13. I didn't. I think I was 9 years old when it actually happened.
But what was the one that went on the moon?
Apollo 11 was the first one.
Okay, that's what I thought it was 11.
Yep, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins. Yeah, these guys were all heroes when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
It just that whole mindset of we're going to do this thing no matter what. We could afford to do it.
Yeah.
Then because we had this huge complex that was developing computers and weapons and everything else. Your average calculator has more computing power than that space capsule did.
Probably the one on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
The
one on your phone. This phone has as much computing power as all the computers in the space shuttle. It had 5 computers to run the space shuttle, and that phone could do it all.
So, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
So you think, so Apollo 13 you think is the most scientifically accurate?
Absolutely.
What did you... Again, from a movie perspective, I remember watching Gravity back in the day.
Yep.
I don't remember a lot. That was Sandra Bullock.
I did not see Gravity. My son saw Gravity at a birthday party, and he says, ugh.
Well, the thing is, I don't remember the movie that well, but the thing I do like about Gravity, visually, it was cool. Like visual effects and clear. Like, wow, that was... The other one that I really enjoyed, and I don't know how accurate it is, I thought The Martian was phenomenal.
Yeah.
With Matt Damon.
I love that.
And I love Matt Damon. He's a great actor, and I just... But again, the cool thing about The Martian, it kind of was like... It reminded me of Apollo 13 meets Castaway.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a beautiful blend.
I think that was the brief when they did it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense. Yep. But then when I realized how long it takes to get to Mars, and then like at one point they're like going back, and we're just going to turn the ship around and go. I'm like, can that happen?
You can't do that.
I'm like, I don't think you could do it. To get the supplies to go back and then go back. And
in the movie, did they talk about the crew of the rescue ship eating each other? Because that's a thing in the book where they're going and they're like, in order for us to go back and get him, some of us have to die.
Really?
Yeah. And
so I didn't. So I have the book on audiobook, but I haven't listened to it yet, and I would like to. But
if I'm remembering it correctly, that was part of the issue: is that some of us have to die, so there's enough life support for you to go and get him. So we have to decide who's going to do what here.
Which is crazy. I was like, see you, dude. You're like, you left. You're on Mars. Like, figure it out.
You'll be fine.
you're the atom of Mars.
That's right.
So. No, that's
a lot of people liked The Martian. A lot of my friends who know this stuff, they liked Gravity. My son went for somebody's 16th birthday party. They rented the theater and they went to see this thing, and he said he almost threw up 3 times.
Gravity.
Gravity. The film was so you were weightless But he's like, Dad, I can't listen to Sandra Bullock breathe. Even if she's in her underwear, I can't listen to her breathe for 90 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, what are we going to do here?
Yeah. So so that Galaxy, was a great, I mean, it was visually a good movie. I don't know how like scientific or accurate it was. Now the other one I was going to say was, like, what's your opinion of Elon Musk? Because obviously you got a guy here that this is all privatized, not done through government, right? Because I'm assuming, I might have this wrong, but NASA is obviously a government organization, but that's been the only real, I guess, organization that's tried to go to space. Am I wrong on that?
Right. Yeah, them and then the Soviet program and then the European Space Agency is doing stuff
like
now.
Sputnik and stuff.
Yeah, Japan I think just launched a mission to Mars, and they just got back some material from the Hayabusa satellite that landed on a comet and took some material off of a comet. And then it's coming back and it's going to drop that capsule into our atmosphere.
It actually has pieces of the
comet. It has material from that comet in it that they're going to drop.
That's amazing.
And so before they do that, you should watch The Andromeda Strain, which is another great science fiction space movie. Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park,
what is it? How do you spell it?
The Andromeda Strain.
He's spelling Andromeda.
Andromeda. I had to think.
Andromeda.
Andromeda. There's a D at the end. No, it's not N-A, it's D-A.
Andromeda.
Yeah, it's like the Andromeda Galaxy.
Strain?
Strain.
Oh, Strain. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a virus that comes back from interstellar space.
And that's a movie.
That's a movie. You bet. And it's also a book by Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park from the late 70s.
And that's worth watching.
Absolutely.
So
you'll wear your face mask every day after you watch the Andromeda Strain.
So if you're if you're so back to the reason I say Elon Musk is because I know a lot about him. No, I have his biography I want to read. But just obviously the stuff he's been able to accomplish. I've listened to him on Rogan. I've listened to him in podcasts. I've listened to him on I've watched interviews with him.
Sure.
Not all there, but all there kind of deal. Like he's just, I think, too smart for most people to comprehend, and I think he kind of knows that because when he talks to people, he's just like, my mind is this, and his I don't know. I think he's just this brilliant guy. But what's your thought on the privatization of the SpaceX, but going to is that something that is going to be, because obviously Jeff Bezos has done something. All these
they're all throwing money at it.
And the idea about going and putting life form on Mars and having that be colonize Mars and I mean, I drove a Tesla a month ago, and those things are. Have you been in one?
I haven't. One of my Cub Scout parents has one.
Ride in one of those things. Ride in one of those things, and as the guy I rode with said, hit the gas.
Yeah, there you go.
It's you really feel it feels like I'm in the SpaceX machine, launching off of Cape Canaveral. So, so what's your thoughts on Elon?
I've never met him. I know very little about him. I have a picture on my web browser at home of him when he was the chief of PayPal, right? That was the program. Yeah, that's where he made all of his money.
With bad hair.
And so you look at the PayPal picture and then you look at his picture now and his press photos, and that's kind of that... I wore a pocket protector in the 70s when I was a little kid, keep the ink off my shirts. So the pocket protector becomes, nerds are cool. Geeks are chic, and he's definitely an example of that. If my dad was still alive, he passed away about 6 years ago, and he taught me everything I know about the stars, everything I learned about the stars as a kid. If he was alive, he would, his favorite quote about things like this was, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Yeah. And
he was a big fan of that. It's like, so it seems like a good idea, but what's the payoff? And he always had me thinking about that the whole life. He was in law enforcement. He was a game warden. And just, that was just kind of his thing. And for me, the Starlink, when I first started hearing about Starlink, this is the low orbiting constellation of cellular Wi-Fi satellites. The idea was to make the internet available from everywhere on the planet. The outback, Africa. He wanted to make the internet something for everyone on the planet, so there would be no inequality in information. Just because you can't afford cable doesn't mean you can't go online. Which you write that out as a sentence and you say, absolutely, I believe in that. So we're looking at it, and as he's getting closer and closer to the launch date, a couple of things start coming to light. So first off, he has no oversight. He's a private company, and what Starlink is every time he launches a Starlink rocket. They call it the bus, the payload carrier for his rockets. It's the same rockets we see launch all the time. But on that rocket are 60 satellites about the size of a dorm refrigerator that have a panel that's between 15 and 25 feet long, that's solar panels that sticks up. And we're looking at the space station. The reason we can see the space station is because all the sunlight reflects off its solar panels. So he punches up 60 of these satellites. And we were playing poker up in the north end at a guy's house, and we were all outside during a break. And this very first Skylink train went overhead, and it looked like a train in the heavens. There were 60 objects there, little dots of light, all traveling together. There was an old computer game called Caterpillar. It looked like Caterpillar going across the sky, and it was bright, and we're looking at it like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then 3 weeks later, he launched another 60. And now they've stopped. They don't even publicize it anymore. It's become so blasé. The Starlink streams, they go up, and over the course of like a week, 10 days, they separate from that train that they're traveling in. With little bursts of maneuvering fuel, they burst out into their orbit, and basically it's going to be what's called a ball of yarn. There'll be a satellite overhead for you, some kind of a Starlink satellite every 10 minutes. There's going to be 3 or 4 in line of sight of you all the time, which is okay, unless you're trying to look at a nebula. Because we were looking at the Lagoon Nebula, which is down low in the south in the summertime. And I timed it for 30 seconds. I said, I want to see what happens here. And I knew that there was going to be a Starlink train or two going through my image. So I was looking at it for 30 seconds, and I counted 47 satellites in 30 seconds. Wow. There were 1 or 2 in my line of sight every night, and every second of that traverse. And that's so that great, okay, we're going to have internet for everybody is terrific. But what it means is ultimately there could be 10,000 of these things up there. And once people started to complain about them messing things up, they said, okay, we'll paint the satellite itself black, which is great. It's not white anymore. It's dark. But the solar panels are still reflecting light. And so the thing is running around. Is it a good thing? Okay. Yeah, like if I'm using a computer to process my imagery, I don't know if Scott does this, but you can have a program now that will take out man-made artifacts. So if I'm taking a picture of the Orion Nebula and I have a 2-minute exposure, 37 satellites go through it. The computer will remove those 37 satellites from the picture to give you that clean image.
Yep.
But that stops being... how do we start? I like the analog experience, sitting and looking.
Yeah.
And I can't take those satellites out of my brain. Am I on board? I don't know. Will it be nice if I can get a Wi-Fi signal if I don't miss The Walking Dead? When I'm out camping or something. Okay, you got to weigh the pros and cons. I don't think Starlink was a great idea. It was a great concept. I think there are different ways to do it. But nobody can stop him. Yeah. He just took, what was that car? $200,000, and he just shot it into space, for advertising, which looked really cool. You got some Bowie airtime there, and it's still going. There's an app you can look up where the car is. It's still tracking its orbit. It's going around. It has like a Mars Earth.
So what happens with something like that?
It
burns up at some point?
It goes until it crashes into something, or it's in a free falling orbit now. It's doing what it's going to do.
So it could be up there for millions of years.
Certainly. And that's okay. It's okay. Eventually anything that's in Earth orbit, eventually they deorbit it. There's a place in the South Pacific. What do they call it? It's not the Elephant's Graveyard, but there's a spot in the South Pacific where the center of this circle, there's no land for 1,000 miles in any direction. It's just this gap, and they call it the satellite graveyard, because when like the Soyuz, the Mir space station, when Skylab, when these military satellites that are like the size of a bus, again, when they run out of their useful life and they can't shoot them out into the sun, they can't shoot them away from Earth, they drop them in the ocean here. And
they're able to direct them.
They
to that
deorbit
location?
it. Yeah, they get close to that spot. That's why it's such a big spot. So they'll say, "Yeah, we're going to drop something next Tuesday. Nobody should be there." And then the satellite will come in. Yeah,
and you're talking 1,000 miles each.
Yeah, like ships. They don't want ships to be there. They look for people that are sailing there, and they're like, "Hey, this is coming down. We're not sure exactly where it's going to land. And for me, I mean, my first thought is I want to get a boat and I want to go sit out there like a meteor power party
So
to watch a
there
satellite.
just falling. I mean, in theory, you could be like here and it could fall in the lake and you'd
Yeah.
be fine. It's
Yeah.
not going to hit you. It's just like,
no, it's not going to hit
you.
you.
Says 20 by 30 or whatever
Yeah.
that might be.
Yeah, and it's going to break up into little pieces. It's going to burn up in the atmosphere. It's going to be a meteor. But they do it that way because there are some things like the power plants, the batteries and stuff that don't break up. And those are going to come down, and you don't want them to come down where people are. So
when all the stuff hits it, does it go to the bottom of the ocean?
yeah.
So there's a spot in the bottom of the ocean which is a bunch of
Just a bunch of junk. Yeah.
satellite meteor, or not meteors, but satellites, and just
Yeah, it's 2,000 or 3,000 feet of water. Yeah. Sooner or later, somebody will figure out a way to make it profitable to go down and get that stuff.
yeah.
Sooner or later, because we're humans, and it's
we're-
cheaper for me to get it from the bottom of the ocean than to make it myself. So
That's wild.
everything about us getting off the ground is wild. Just right back to the Wright brothers. Who thought of this?
That's the idea when you talk about like pressure going up and pressure going down and wings and all
Yep.
this stuff, and it's like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's still the idea. Like you watch a plane go off, and you're like, look at that thing that's thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds just flying through the air like a bird.
Yeah.
And it's trippy. And we all rode on planes, like we all know
Yep.
that we've been on it, and you just you take it for granted. But you're literally in the sky right now. This is the thing that freaks me. You know when you talk about like freaking out? When
Don't
you're, like,
think about it too
when
much.
You're like, when you're sitting in your chair and you're like thinking like below me, like I don't know, 20 feet, maybe. I don't know, maybe like
Yeah.
whatever that distance
Not
is.
even that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe less. I'm like, then it's just nothing for 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm just like sitting up here. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to think about that. Let me put my movie back on and
Yep.
zone out. But I think it's the idea it's just incredible because there's times you think like you overthink about it, and I'm like, there's science to it. But again, I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to this stuff. But it's the idea you can appreciate it and say it's pretty incredible. And we're a little over 100 years into it.
Yeah.
So you got to think technology back then, like they made it happen over 100 years ago. That's wild. Like now, I mean, they've done it, but now like they're shooting stuff to Mars, which is
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Yeah. That's the next step. They thought people lived on Mars, 100 years ago. So. Right.
Was that
it's-
a thing?
yeah.
It could've been. I mean,
the
yeah.
Martian canals. They were looking at the color gradations on Mars, and that's when Percival Lowell in Arizona thought that there were Mars canals. There was a civilization there. And
How many? Obviously, there's the whole moon conspiracy about did we ever land on the moon?
Yes, we did.
Then there's also like the whole thing like what was it, the flag can't float because there's no gravity.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
there's also the thing with
The shadows.
well, I don't know which one's that.
The shadows. They're like, how can we see him if he's in the shadow of the moon? Or if he's in the shadow of the lander and he's coming down the ladder and he's lit up, and it's because the light is reflecting off of the lunar surface and hitting him. It's like the way we can see the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
It's the light shining off of Earth and hitting the back side of the moon.
So that's the whole thing. It's
Yeah,
just
that's the whole thing.
Well, I think you would see it no matter where you are on the moon.
Yeah.
We can't see the dark side of the moon, but if you go up to the moon and go to that side, I'm sure you
Yeah.
can, right?
Yeah.
It's a moon.
Yeah. There was a picture taken of me just there, guys, and my face had a sneer on it. Just so you know, when people say we didn't go to the moon, I just automatically get a sneer. I try to have an open mind, but it's like, come on, guys.
So then the other thing with like when you talk about like aliens and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they always say like this Area 51, and
Mm-hmm.
like, have you gone into the whole UFO phenomenon?
Yeah, my family was Army, Air Corps, Air Force, Navy pilots, and the generations above me, and we're just kind of prosaic about it. An unidentified flying object is something you look at and you don't know what it is. You
So
know,
wasn't it? So this was over. I mean, 2020 has been like the wild, wild west. Like
Yeah.
anything's happening,
And it's not over yet.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't they? Yeah, we're 2/3 of the way through. So didn't something get released by the government that was like, we did identify UFOs recently, but it was kind of like slipped in there, almost like everything else is going crazy. We're just going to slide this little piece of information. It's a good time to drop it. And
That's right.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, we got all this other
we'll
stuff
have the
going on.
president say it. I didn't see that particular stuff. I know that. Remember a couple of years ago, a stuntman named Felix Baumgartner did the jump from space.
Unreal.
Right? Absolutely unreal. So
This one, he was like sat there and just like dropped.
dropped away. So his crew chief that they were showing in the cameras was a guy named Kittlinger, I think. He was the guy in 1946 that did that same thing. The project was called High Jump.
Yes, trying to beat it. Yes.
Yeah, and so they were testing getting back to the planet. They were testing parachutes and survival equipment. And he came down his capsule because they're lifted by a balloon and the balloon bursts. That capsule came down by Roswell, New Mexico. and his pressure suit failed. They had to cut his helmet off of him because his head expanded up to almost twice its normal size because he was in a pressureless environment. So they're taking him into a hospital, and if you see you can see the pictures of it now. It's been declassified. He looks like what we call the gray aliens. And here's all this silvery, weird-looking crap with fabric flapping around it in the desert by Roswell, New Mexico. And somebody sees it and doesn't think about it. And, oh, that was a flying saucer. So you can explain anything
So it was
away.
the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what they thought was an alien is actually this guy that
Could it? Well, that's one theory.
Oh, it was a theory. Gotcha.
Some
Okay.
people would say that I'm just a shill for the establishment because I'm making a reasonable explanation for what they saw in the hospital.
We don't like you kind of.
Yeah,
right?
we don't like people like
Conspiracies, don't ruin our fun.
Yeah, and so yeah, are there things we don't understand? Yeah, I look at the Champlain sea monster, right?
Yeah.
You know, Champy.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
If you do a statistical analysis, if you want to be scientific, put on the map every sighting that's ever been made of Champy and draw a 1 mile radius circle around it. Within that 1 mile radius circle, there will be a bar or tavern in every one of those sightings. So I'm not saying that people were drunk and they saw something that wasn't there. I don't know. But you know, I don't want to be that guy where people are having fun and they're like, oh, that idiot's going to make me feel bad about this. No, you know,
Yeah.
I've seen deer swim across, when we're on the ferry, you see deer swim across the lake all the time.
Really?
Yeah. And in the late summer, there's a little bit of a mirage effect, and it looks like something with horns and humps behind it because you're seeing a mirage effect. And yeah, it's
I've
cool.
never seen deer do that.
That's cool. Yeah, deer do it, bear do it. There was a moose a couple of years ago that swam across.
I saw a bear going to Lake Placid the other day. First time I've ever seen a bear run across the road.
In the woods, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a little cub. Like
And a lot of people would say bears don't exist here.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah, we
Black
saw
bear
it.
ran across the road.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah. It was an oversized raccoon.
There you
It
go.
freaked people out even more.
There you go.
The Baumgartner thing when he went Baumgartner, right?
Yep.
So when he was up, it was 2000. I remember this 2012.
Yep.
It was October 2012, and the only reason I remember is 'cause I had a wedding that day. I remember sitting there and I was like, I watched the whole thing. Like he just like turned it up. Some weird channel had it on.
Yeah, it was like, it wasn't Twitch, but it was.
Some like weird stream, but it was on TV. And I was
Yep.
like, I'm just like, I sat there and watched. I mean, he went up. I don't know how long it took him to go up, but it didn't take him long to come down. Probably what, under 10 minutes?
yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that. And he was like spinning like this because he had to like kind of like, it was like you said, he was just like nothing. He was in no man's land. But when he was going all the way up and you're like just what's going to happen? And then the satellite, whatever he was in, dropped down too, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just that scene because they had the camera right behind him and when he just like jumped and you're just like,
Yep.
this guy's nuts.
Yeah.
And
the last thing he said was, "I'm going home," and he stepped out.
Yeah,
To go back to the planet.
and when you're just like I don't, because you got to think the guys that go up in the space station. Obviously, it's a very cool experience. I mean, I'd love to do that. I don't even got to like guess if you would love to do it. It's like I think I would. Yes, like anybody else would love to do it. The odds that you go up are slim to none. I mean, there's only so many people that have actually gone up in the space.
Right.
But it's the whole idea of like just that experience of like looking down and seeing the planet. It's got to be trippy.
Yeah.
And then for this guy just to jump out and be like, I'm just going to jump down there. Because you can, like, realistically, when you're that high up, how much of the planet is considered a target for you to land?
Yeah.
Because it's like, really, I can just like turn my parachute. I mean, obviously at a certain point you have to parachute, but like, you probably could end up thousands of miles away if you're just like,
Yeah, they had helicopters waiting for him. Yeah.
which. I mean, he landed pretty damn good.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I want to land on that spot on the thing, and he got down there. I'm like, this is wild.
That's where the cameras are.
Yeah, and then he basically just landed and walked. I'm like, it's like, where'd you come from? I just fell from space. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, well, good for you.
Yeah, don't mind me.
She's wild. So, yeah. So, just because more time wise, not anything else. This is
Yeah,
great.
no
I can
worries.
listen to this. We're gonna have you back on, and you can tell. I'm sure you can
Okay.
tell.
Yeah.
You do a good job talking.
We'll
so
get
it's
Scott
good.
on. We'll get Hannah on. We'll get everybody on here. We'll make it happen.
Hannah will have a lot of eye rolling. We love Hannah though. I always tell her we gave out the Cavi Awards. You ever watch The Office?
Yeah.
So the Dundies. So we got
Yep.
Cavi Awards, which when I got the Cavi Award, I called up Lorman's and I said, "Listen, I need an award. I need the worst award you can come up with because this is kind of like
Right.
the butt of the joke." So needless to say, butt of the joke, we end up getting a horse's ass as the trophy. So I have a couple of them up there, but a legit is one they found down. And he's like, I got the perfect. I was talking to Ross there, and I'm thinking like, I don't know, a bowling trophy. Give me like the Dundee's just a guy with like a briefcase. He said, give me anything. So he literally gives me the backside of a horse. So I'm like, this is
Oh.
yeah, that's up there. The Cavies. Oh yeah, the
go. It's a
Cavies.
Cavi.
So The reason I say it is Hannah got the cabbie for the best eye roll. So
Nice.
Partly at my, I guess, at me.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's the thought that counts.
It's
right?
it. It's it. At least
absolutely.
I know that I've gotten that level of comfort where she can just roll her eyes at me and not think twice. So, but yeah, I will probably get you and Scott back on because I'm sure.
cool.
Because Scott, I mean,
This is fun.
Scott's one of my favorite. Like the amount of stuff that guy does just blows my mind. And Scott's also, to this day, has the longest running podcast that we ever did.
Really?
Because, and I think he'll vouch for this, and I might just partly because I'm terrible at doing this. He came on late at night, probably came on at like 6 o'clock. So I'm thinking we're going to go a couple hours, 6 to 8, 8:30. So we're talking. I'm like looking up at the clock. I'm like, we got some time. Well, the clock had moved back, I think. No, move forward or whatever the time frame
change.
Time change. I am the worst because the clock is above my reach, and I have to get a chair. And obviously, that's a lot of work to get a chair and change the clock. So I procrastinate on that for. Could be anywhere from a couple days to 6 months. So,
Nice.
so we were looking up, and I wasn't like I had my phone on me, so at the desk, so we weren't really checking stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm like, and I wasn't looking at this because I can see like how long we've been talking. So not paying attention. I'm like, time's good. And he goes, I look down, I'm like, it's 3 hours and 40 minutes. 3 hours and 40 minutes. Almost double what we talked. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we checked the phone. I'm like, oh crap. Because both of us obviously had told our wives we'd be home much earlier than we had. And, but it was the same thing.
Your wives are very understanding.
Yes. And both named Gina, by the way.
Yep, I know.
So this whole thing is happening. And my favorite line about Scott, I think has listened to a few of them. I mean, he's been on them, but he's listened to a couple. So I'm sure you might listen to this if Scott, hello, if you've made it this far. So, but the whole, we're sitting there and he's
Why aren't you here?
Yeah, exactly. So he's sitting there and he's telling me the story, and in true Scott fashion, goes through the whole story. And he goes, "Oh yeah, so I did that, but I was an instructor to jump out of planes or something like that." And then he went right into something different. I'm like, whoa, hold the phone. I said,
hold on.
Wait, you jumped out of planes? He go, yeah, like I don't know how many, a couple hundred times jumped out of the plane. I was a plane instructor in Italy, and I'm like, well, wait. And for most people, that would be like a highlight, a big talking point. In Scott Brightwell's life, that was just something. That was just like an end to. That was like a little transition to the other story he wanted to tell. Like, wait, let's talk about this. So it was 3 hours and 40 minutes of just randomness that I think there's some mutual friends of ours that basically. I think it was might have been Paul DiDomenico.
Yep.
I think
and
he
Willow.
Said, I think yes, Paul and Willow, and I think his daughter. I think it's his daughter, Paul's daughter, or Paul's daughter that said about Scott, I want to try to do something that Scott has not done. And I think
That's
just
tough.
the idea of finding something that he has not done is tough.
That's a game show. Yeah.
I think Scott could be on his own game show. I think Scott's got enough. Scott's one of the, like you said, like when you say like I'm jack of all trades, master of none, Scott is like I'm a master of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And really like, I mean, maybe a master of one, but he masters a lot of stuff. And then you're like, I don't know if he gets bored or whatever. He's like, I'm just going to go get really good at that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. He's a master going for whatever he wants to go for.
Yeah.
He's like, I need to do that. And he does it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You should do a Scott Brightwell cast sometime. Just bring on people that know Scott and have him tell Scott stories.
It's kind of like an opposite of a Scott roast.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's going to be listening to us. He says he can't make it. He's wrapping up quarantine from his trip, so he can't leave. He's doing that thing.
We'll get you guys both on because originally I wanted both of you, and then I sent you because he was gone. So I was like, I don't know where Scott is.
That's awesome.
Now. Scott's like one of the world's Scott Brightwell right now. But no, Scott's great. He's one of the most incredible people I know, just from the vast knowledge of many different topics.
That's Scott Brightwell.
Scott Brightwell. Yeah. Look him up. He's a phenomenal photographer too. So
absolutely.
But Ed, we're going to end there. We'll get you back on that. We'll get you with Scott.
No worries. This is fun. First time I've ever done this.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I'm happy because you said you listen to podcasts, but it's, you hit the ground running. Some people get a little nervous, and then I see this. You talk for like 2 hours. Usually the first like 10, 15 minutes is kind of like I'm nervous, and then you start people get in their groove. Like you hit your groove right off, so I wasn't too worried. All right, so we're going to end there.
Awesome.
Ed Guenther, everybody, he is fantastic. If you see him out and about, he's the guy with the telescopes luring you in to look at his telescope.
But, the voice in the darkness.
But yeah, so
look at this.
If he sounds like this guy and he has a telescope, it's okay. Go look, take a look, enjoy it. It's all cool at the star party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
You bet. Thanks,
Perfect.
Galen.
Thanks, Ed.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. If you want to reach me, you can go on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. The spelling, GaelanTrombley.